93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
And here we go.
I should have stayed home and played with myself.
What do you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
The Indianapolis Colts select Anthony Richardson, quarterback, Florida.
Richardson going to take off and run. He's in there! Touchdown! I-N-D-Y! The first career touchdown!
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it! Hits it!
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, John here. Thank you for joining us. Busy show today. I'm glad you're around. Weird. So about noon, I'm rolling around, and it's pouring down rain. We got a little bit of thunder and lightning, maybe some sun out there right now. Last I checked, there was. That was about 10 minutes ago. We don't have a window right here, as I mentioned, so I am just guessing and relying upon the weather updates from you out there. And a lot of sports conversation that's coming up today, loaded and ready to go from a variety of situations. We'll start with the Boilermakers on the road. Boilermakers on the road to close things out and win it all to themselves. Everything. Unanimously. I don't know if that's the case. Unanimously. Outright conference title. And this is going to be, I think, the game of the year in Champaign later on tonight. At least the game of the year in the Big Ten. That is on Peacock. It is Purdue and Illinois. Bobby Riddell, Bobby Buckets will join us for the Boilermaker Radio Network coming up at the 4 o'clock hour for a little breakdown of that. If you remember the first time the two teams met, it got a little interesting down the stretch in Mackey Arena in West Lafayette. And Illinois is good. Illinois is good. Illinois is well coached. You know, no matter what you feel about Brad Underwood, if you don't like his antics on the side, who cares? He is a hard-nosed coach, and he normally gets exactly what he wants out of his guys. I have a great deal of admiration for him. I don't mind at all watching him on the sideline because he'll work his guys. Not a lot of coaches out there in this era will choose somebody out right there on the sideline like he will. And for those of us that are older from a different generation, we have a great deal of admiration for that because we, a couple of different times with a coach like that, we were on the other end of it. So you get a lot of admiration. It's weird. You go through it and you understand it a little bit more. You don't go through it and you go, I can't believe that's going down. But that should be fun later on tonight. That is a 7 o'clock start, I believe, right, on Peacock. That's Noah Eagle, Robbie Hummel, and I believe Bardo. That's a 3-man booth for you coming up later on tonight on Peacock from Champaign. So we'll talk to Bobby Riddell of the Boilermaker Radio Network about that game, the matchups. It's funny, I brought this up yesterday, too. I told Boilermaker fans, it's not like you need me to reaffirm this for you, all right? But I did mention that it's okay to celebrate on Saturday. It'll be okay to celebrate tonight. It's okay to celebrate another Big Ten Conference Tournament title. It's okay. We all understand exactly what you're going for here and what truly matters for you because, believe me, there are different sets of circumstances. I gave you this yesterday with Indiana State. I just want to see them get to the tournament. And I really want to see them get to the tournament in the fashion that we've grown accustomed to, and that's winning games. And not having to rely on a committee to put together some numbers and analysis work and looking at quad this and quad that and quad. I don't care. I want to see them win their way in it without having to wait around and see what the committee comes up with. Like Joe Lunardi has nothing at-large wise. I think Jerry Palm may have an at-large. Who was Jerry Palm on with? On the morning show a little bit earlier? I'd have to double back. I'm sure Swebo can send me something right now what Jerry Palm said about Indiana State, but I just ride with the fact that I am not going to feel good unless they win it. That is going to be tough. But there are different sets of circumstances. If you get in it, if you're Indiana State, that is a hell of a big deal. And hopefully Josh Schertz hangs around. Hopefully if Josh Schertz hangs around, you don't lose your guys, because there are some guys on that team, one in particular that wears goggles, that other schools are going to try to poach, that other schools are going to try to get NIL deals from, to get in the transfer portal and bring them in. I think if Josh Schertz hangs around, if they get him paid, give him a raise, I think they go at it again. However, if they don't, all bets are off. So I'd like to see them, just for a variety of reasons of which I just named, cash that in. Again, on the other hand, if you're Purdue, you've been down this path before. You've been there and you've done that. You want to see the overall results. You are looking at this at a completely different angle. I respect that too. That doesn't mean you disregard the accomplishments. But it's like a player. It's like, I'm sure what Matt Painter's telling his guys, hey, it's okay to look at this, and hey, we'll celebrate that for a minute. But you move on because your goals are much larger. That's where they are. That's where you are as Boilermaker fans. And I, for one, cannot wait until this matchup coming up later on tonight. So we'll chat about that, chat about a little college basketball. Greg Rakestraw is going to join me coming up at the bottom of the hour. We were both in Terre Haute on Sunday. We will talk about that and what I felt was, and again, I could be wrong about this, right? I could be wrong about this. But the way that I look at this last weekend in high school basketball, I thought it was one of the better sectional weeks, and then a Saturday night result. I mean, it seemed like old times, although maybe I've just recently forgotten how good they still have been. But I just felt this past weekend especially, and with the sellouts, for example, at Noblesville, with what you got at a variety of the venues around the state, I thought last week was incredibly special for high school basketball. We'll talk to Greg about that at the bottom of the hour. Nick says that Jerry Palm said ISU was not getting in unless they win the tournament. So, yeah, we kind of follow along. There it is, the franchise tag for Michael Pittman Jr. According to Tom Pelissero, the franchise tag for the first time since Pat McAfee will be handed out to Michael Pittman Jr. So what this will do right now is buy a little bit more time to hammer out a longer-term deal. And, hopefully that is done sooner rather than later, because even if you're a guy like Michael Pittman Jr., you're probably not going to do much off-season stuff until you see a longer-term situation arise. I was actually talking to Todd a little bit earlier, and he said, what do you think is going to happen today? And I thought, because it was so late in the process, you're under basically 90 minutes now, that the franchise tag, at least for the moment, was probably going to be what it was. It's funny, I go back to last week, and when Ballard was on with the fellas with Sweebo in the morning, he used Tool so much, it almost felt like, that Tool, I'd mentioned it, akin to the Swiss Army knife and that tool that you rarely use. I guess in this case, since you haven't used it since McAfee, that you could describe it as such. But the franchise tag from Michael Pittman Jr., we'll talk about that with Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Colts, coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, and how meaningful just having Michael Pittman Jr. as a part of this is going to be. Because it's funny, when you mention his name, everybody loves the volume of catches in which he has. But the way that you look at it, it's not just the volume. You're looking for yards after the catch, which he does not have. Thus the rub right there. Part of the reason why some are questioning whether or not he should be long-termed. So the franchise tag for Michael Pittman Jr., so he's going to get, I believe the number is 21.8 for 2024. That is the number for 2024 if it remains where it is. 2024's number is rather large. That's $21.8 million for Michael Pittman Jr. You got to keep him around. You got to have the most around him. And again, the franchise tag on him, $21.816 million is the full financials of it. And the conversations regarding a long-term deal, again, with this buys them time to continue down that particular path. It's the first time in 11 years the Colts have utilized the franchise tag. You guys remember what the number was for Pat McAfee back in 2013? The number was a lot less, $2.9 million for McAfee then, 2013. If I remember accurately, too, I'd have to look this up. I think that there was a lot of Jim Irsay to do with that, too, if memory serves, back in 2013. And as we note this, McAfee was not at all a fan of Ryan Grigson. But that was the last time it was utilized, again, 11 years ago, to the tune of $2.9 million. And Michael Pittman Jr., $2.8 million as they continue to have dialogue to work to what is going to be a long-term deal of some sort right there. The franchise tag from Michael Pittman Jr. and Shane Steichen will join me in studio coming up a little bit later on for a discussion regarding how valuable he is, and especially with Anthony Richardson. Now, how you have to make sure this guy stays around. You know, it's funny. We've talked to Michael Pittman Jr., and I know the morning show talked to Chris Ballard. You know, I'll talk to Shane Steichen. It seems like everybody is on the same page with the exception of the absolute lockdown financials of it right now. And what I mean by that is Michael Pittman Jr. wants to stay and be here. The Colts want him to stay and be here, but they are still going to haggle, evidently, over what that number is going to be. $21.8 million with that franchise tag. Now, we'll talk to Shane Steichen about that coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. So be around for that. Certainly, actually, a variety of things. You know, how they want to try to help expedite even more so his numbers in terms of yards after the catch. But there's a lot of things I want to talk about, and especially why that hasn't been there. And then offensively, how you plan on handling Anthony Richardson upon his return. And in a draft that is loaded with wide receivers, where does the Steichen angle come in here with, no doubt, as the leader of the offense, the play caller, the offensive coordinator, and the head coach, how he would like to add to that? The internal debate is what we want to hear about. Shane Steichen's coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. We shall have that for you. Paul Casaro of Indy also in the 5 o'clock hour. Just another great regular season for the Greyhounds down on the south side. Paul joins us today at 5:30. I mentioned Bobby Riddell, Boilermaker Radio Network, the former Boilermaker, in the 4 o'clock hour. Do we know as of yet where Spielberger is?
He'll be at 4:30.
All right, Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus. We'll let him get an outside angle on this and then go from there with Brad Spielberger. He joins us coming up at about 4:30 today. We can talk about that and a lot more. Your thoughts on the franchise tag going to Michael Pittman Jr. You got the Pacers on the road against Dallas coming up later on tonight, and everybody's offered their opinion on exactly why the Pacers are where the Pacers are right now. There is no doubt they're in a struggle situation. There is no doubt Tyrese Halliburton is that. I will say, I don't think it's all defense like some would suggest or those defensive adjustments. I think a lot is him being a little bit tired. I think certainly just a lot is him going through a rut right now. And as I mentioned yesterday, do not disregard, again, that trade for Buddy Hield, as we've talked about. Doesn't matter how well he was shooting. Doesn't matter if he was going through a slump. You can see the ball stick. You can see the movement out there. You can see the lack of space in which Halliburton has to deal with. It's funny. In Dallas at 8:30 later on tonight, 8 o'clock, your coverage begins right here on The Fan. And if you remember, last time out against Dallas, I had described that as their best performance of the season. All the way around. That was a team going in that had won 7 straight games. And the Pacers from start to finished off the Mavericks. A little bit of a scuffle against New Orleans, if you will, back on Wednesday night of a week ago. But since that point in time, it's not just been losing. It's not just been, going through a rut. They've played really some incredibly bad basketball. And that bad basketball has been from the beginning of games. Now, it's not so difficult to wonder why in New Orleans on a Friday night when in a home-and-home, New Orleans wanted a little bit of payback, a little bit salty, came out, missed 2 shots in the first quarter, got both the offensive rebounds, so 0 defensive board work in the first quarter last Friday night in New Orleans. And then once the Pacers got back into it, I thought with the group that they had out there, they should have kept out there, and Rick kind of unplugged it a little bit, and there goes the momentum. I'm not suggesting they were going to win that game, but they certainly had worked their way back into it. The most disappointing aspect was that in San Antonio, because you come out after getting done in New Orleans in the fashion in which you did, and you really did most of the game. Not all of it. You showed little resistance on either end. Now, again, as I mentioned yesterday, the one thing you could not afford is to not continue or at least being in the neighborhood of what you had accomplished offensively that had been your mainstay throughout the season. You'd love to get better defensively, and I guess they've gotten better defensively, 2 or 3 spots, but dropping down that plus in the offensive category is exactly what this team could not endure, and they have, and has been problematic. That is what it's all about right there. That's what this team is. And I'd often told you this. When people came out of the All-Star break and suggested that the Pacers, against the overall NBA schedule-wise, has a soft final regular season games, I thought the way that you look at it, it was a hell of a lot better of a schedule than anybody gave it credit for. And now with the teams that are directly around them in the Eastern Conference right now, it is by far the most difficult. Miami and Orlando with that consideration. It is far more difficult. And then I told you, try to be in the best position possible, and then you look at those last 8 games as an opportunity to gain a little bit more ground. The other aspect of it is, frankly, I think you would all agree with me on this. They just simply haven't played as well with Pascal Siakam as we thought they were going to. That has not been the case. And you're still looking for that. This team, just flow-wise, looks different offensively. The ball doesn't pop around as much as it did. And obviously, that always starts with Tyrese Halliburton. And if he's going to have games as he's had, especially, for example, in New Orleans on Friday night, but games like he's had in the past 2 on the road against decent teams, and San Antonio has not been a decent team, but is playing better as of late. Got that win against OKC before they beat the Pacers on Sunday in San Antonio. But the Pacers are going to find tough matchups all over the place if Halliburton cannot find his stroke again. If you cannot dig out of that hole, tonight would be a fine time to do that. Again, the last time out, you looked across the board. Miles had 33, but you looked across the board, and that was from start to finish one of the better games that we have seen all season long. The Pacers need to recreate a little bit of that coming up later on tonight. Man, they really need it. Yeah, there are still expectations. I said 45 even before they acquired Pascal Siakam, but you certainly raised the bar on that. And, you know, this team, frankly, hasn't raised the bar with Siakam being a part of it yet. Got to find a groove. Well, we'll see if that begins coming up later on tonight. That's at 8:30. Pacers on the road at Dallas. And we'll get you started at 8 o'clock here on the Pacers Radio Network. As I mentioned, Boilermakers and Fighting Illini at 7 on Peacock. Bobby Riddell of the Boilermaker Radio Network alongside Rob Blackman is going to join us coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. Brad Spielberger of Pro Football Focus. Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Colts in the 5 o'clock hour. Paul Casaro, the head coach of Indy in the 5 o'clock hour as well. The latest, Michael Pittman Jr. gets the franchise tag as they continue to have dialogue. But as of right now, it's Michael Pittman Jr. with the franchise tag. Jeremiah asked this, am I hearing a must-win tonight for the Pacers? You know, normally, it's funny, Jeremiah, when you mention that. I am noted for the must-win call. I think oftentimes the must-win also comes in the territory, or maybe even in a better disguise. The must-win call from me comes in that disguise where I have a pretty strong belief that the team that I'm tagging with a must-win can win. I don't know if I have that belief tonight. You know, fair or unfair, I don't know if I have that belief, and that might, in this case, call for me not to make the must-win category. Like this, to me, this is the... All right, so we're going to get out of it. We're going to get out of it right now. But if you're going to call me to say must win, I've got to feel as if a little bit the opportunity is there. I sit before you right now, and I don't have that feeling. Now, again, I watch every minute of every game. I watch, obviously, Friday and Sunday. I probably shouldn't have a reason to have a feeling. But that also comes, again, in the territory, or in disguise, if you will, of the must win is feeling that they're going to win. Like a must-win for Illinois tonight. I don't have a strong feeling they can win. I don't have a strong feeling that they're gonna. That always kind of comes with the territory of my must-wins. It's not like I just throw it out there against the wall and see that it sticks. But no, Jeremiah, it would be nice if they did it. I just don't know if they're ready yet. And part of that issue is then you skip to a Thursday night back at home against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Are they still the best defense in the Western Conference as it stands right now? I don't feel strongly about that either. So tonight would go a long way in what has been a roller coaster, an up and down season in following this team, and a lot of good, but most recently not so much. Need to reestablish a little bit of belief. Hey, believe me, too, if you're Tyrese Halliburton, a slump comes in a lot of different cloaks. One of those is your confidence. When your confidence disappears, that's when you see somebody slump, and Tyrese Halliburton needs to play his way out of it. That's what we expect him to do. Tonight would be a hell of a night to do that. I can't sit here and tell you that I feel too confident about them winning. So no tag of must win for the Pacers on the road in Dallas coming up later on tonight. All right, Greg Rakestraw is going to join us on the other side, college basketball outlook, and a lot more. I want to hear from you regarding Michael Pittman Jr. getting the franchise tag. I think it's just a matter of time before it's long-termed out. But evidently, Chris Ballard is using that not often utilized tool in the Swiss Army knife at least as of right now, to buy a little bit of time and work on common ground with a long-term situation with his wide receiver. Franchise tag for Michael Pittman Jr. Break for this show inside the AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live. The stream, the app, it is HD radio. If you have that in your car, truck, or van, it sounds absolutely outstanding. And a lot of stuff to talk about over the course of the afternoon. And I would love to hear from you at 239-1070. Greg Rakestraw coming up on the other side. This is 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Hi, this is ESPN's Mike Greenberg.
Ride with JMV.
Now you listen here. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Now go away.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
James over there, I'm John, the franchise tag to Michael Pittman Jr. Now, Pittman can negotiate if he chooses with other teams. He can get other offers. Now, Indy also has the right to match the deal or to get 2 first-rounders from his new team. That is what is called the non-exclusive tag. And, again, the first time since Pat McAfee, this has been utilized in 11 years. With 2.9 from McAfee back then. 21.8 for Pittman this year. So it is called the non-exclusive tag with Michael Pittman Jr. We'll talk about Michael Pittman Jr. and his value with this team with his head coach, Shane Steichen, coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, friend of the show, he was the Louise de my Thelma to Terre Haute this past Sunday to the Holman Center to watch Indiana State cash in on an outright regular season crown in the Missouri Valley. Greg Rakestraw joins us. Hello, Greg.
Hello. It's been long enough. Was Louise the driver of those two?
I don't know. I don't know which one's which. I don't know if Susan Sarandon's. I think Thelma is Gina Davis. Yeah, I think Thelma is Gina Davis and Louise is Susan Sarandon. So Susan Sarandon's the driver. I'm Gina Davis.
I've been called worse. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. You surprised about the franchise tag for Pittman today?
Not at all, because I always thought that if they could not negotiate a long-term deal by 4 o'clock, then the franchise tag would be applied. And what the press release went out, at 3 o'clock today? So, no, I'm not surprised that it has played out in this fashion in any way, shape, form, or other. And, again, I still think that the Colts will view this as a negotiating window all the way up to training camp. It'll go longer if they feel it needs to, but this doesn't strike me as being contentious. I hope I'm not proved wrong about that, but I always thought this deal would get done one way or the other.
Yeah, it seems like these things certainly most of the time are and certainly can become, but I would agree. It seems like both sides want some common ground to happen as quickly as possible. That just has yet to be achieved.
I mean, the Colts have gone out of their way to say nothing but wonderful things about Michael Pittman Jr. And, again, he has done everything they have asked him to do over the course of his 4 years with this team. So, again, I think this is simply a step in the process.
It's Greg Rakestraw who is with us. I did want to bring up something high school-wise before we got into college and Sunday and all. I thought, and maybe I'm overblowing this a little bit, maybe it happens each and every year, and you would know above all else, I felt that last weekend had about as much juice and buzz for any sectional week and any sectional final Saturday night in recent history. Would that be an accurate description?
I felt that love all the way across the state. And just looking at, sellout after sellout, tremendous crowd after tremendous crowd. Obviously, the nature of finishes. I mean, my goodness, the Orleans Bar Reeve game going to 5 overtimes, the way that Guerin and Brebeuf ended in the second overtime, sellout at Noblesville, sellout at Greenfield Central. I was at Lawrence North, and it wasn't a sellout, but it was close, and it was a really good crowd for 2 really good teams in terms of Lawrence North and Cathedral. Mishawaka had a tremendous finish with South Bend Riley in their game. Other sectionals like that across the state. So, no, I thought last week and Saturday night in particular was really good for Indiana high school basketball.
Is it because there are just so many incredible matchups so early in this process, or was it something else altogether that you feel that this had as much juice as we've seen in a while?
I think the matchups are a part of that, especially in 4A. But I also just think there is a greater sense of appreciation for Indiana high school basketball. I still think there is something to not having had the tournament in 2020, at least past the sectional round, for having such reduced crowds the year after that because of COVID. I think the last 2 or 3 years, people have been very appreciative of being able to go back and watch a game in person and being around other people. So I think it's a combination of factors. I think part of it is, too, again, there is not a dominant team this year. there are favorites. Brownstown's the favorite in 2A. You would probably say Fishers is the favorite now they've gotten through the Hamilton County sectional. It's not like they have an easy path in terms of Kokomo, whoever comes out of the South. Whoever comes out would meet them in the semi-state if they get past Kokomo. 3A is as wide open as possibly can be. I think the talent's a little more concentrated in the southern half as far as the 1A bracket is concerned, but it's still multiple teams that have a chance to win there. So I think it's a lot of factors that play into it, John.
What do you like the most when you look at the regionals coming up this week? What are some of the intriguing matchup? Maybe the most intriguing to you, Greg?
Well, obviously Kokomo and Fishers, and that game's being played at Newcastle, and I expect that to be 9,000 strong watching that game. Just because if Fishers does what they did to Kokomo back on December the 9th, that's Flory Badunga's last game in a Kokomo uniform as an Indiana high school basketball player. Fishers, has been really good. They have not gotten past the sectional until this year. This is the first in their 18 years after splitting off from HSC. So there is a lot of draw towards that game. I think the two games at Southport are going to be fantastic. There will be a Johnson County invasion of Perry Township to watch Center Grove and Franklin, play each other on Saturday evening. That's the game that we'll have on My Indy TV, free stream at ihsaatv.org for that contest on Saturday night as well. There are good matchups all across the state. So those are the ones that catch my attention. But, again, I tend to live in the 4A world in the Indianapolis area. But there are great ones all across the state of Indiana this week.
Greg, before we move on to college basketball, I did want to mention New Pal because with what they did, Greenfield Central unbeaten. We know about the star power, obviously, they have. Tell us a little bit about, I think the kid's name's Julius Gizzy. Is that the junior for New Pal that just had an absolute, not only outstanding season, but certainly an outstanding sectional final?
I think he is approaching 800 points for the year, which I know is a New Pal school record. For those who know the Gizzy family, his older brother Max is a senior at Marion. His sister Isabella, or Izzy Gizzy, you got to love that, is a freshman at St. Francis.
Is she Izzy Gizzy? Is that what it is? That's awesome.
She goes by Isabella, I think, for that reason.
Izzy Gizzy is awesome, though. I love that.
But her mom was the coach at New Pal on the girls' side for a long time. Mom was a great player at New Pal. Mom and Dad both played at LaSalle, which is where they met, as in Speedy Morris or Speedy Claxton.
Yeah.
And the L Train, Lionel Simmons, LaSalle, that LaSalle. It's just a great basketball family. And Julius, was a player on last year's team that made the regional, more of a role player, about 8 or 9 points a game. And he carried a few extra pounds. He got in the gym and he dropped 45 pounds between his sophomore and his junior year. And now he's the second leading scorer in the state in terms of a per-game basis, and was over 30. He may be there now, but he was over that number for a good chunk of the season. So as part of a tremendous junior class in the state, he has now kind of added his name into that mix. And that Ben Davis game, I think, is going to be a really good one. That's the first game at Southport on Saturday, and I think it's going to be a really good game because, frankly, New Pal, one time I saw New Pal, they played at Lawrence North, and they did so without their starting point guard, and they led that game into the fourth quarter and just kind of ran out of gas from being a player short. I think New Pal's pretty good basketball.
So Greg Rakestraws of the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. One final thing, Sullivan, Brownstown Central, as far as Southern Indiana is concerned, that's down in Washington at the Hatchet House. That looks like a fantastic high school regional matchup to me.
It should be. Sullivan is a solid team, but I think Brownstown is the best team outside of 4A, period. I think if Brownstown was in 3A, they would win 3A this year because there are a few in this state like Jack Benner. And, again, he's got other talented players and a good amount of size around him on that team. And so, this is a Brownstown team that, they beat Brownsburg this year without Jack Benner because he missed time because of a couple of different injuries that he suffered. And they've had pieces that have all missed time. It's one of those things that I think it has made them stronger because they learn how to kind of play without somebody if they kind of have to. So I really think Sullivan's a good team, and Sullivan won a good sectional at Paoli. And I think Brownstown is different than anybody else in 2A, and especially in the southern half of 2A. If there is somebody that's going to give Brownstown, I think, a really close game in the postseason, it's probably the state championship game because I think Tipton's pretty good, Wapahani's pretty good. They play each other at Lapel this week, and Blackhawk Christian is on a roll these days. Seemingly it doesn't matter whom the last names of the players are. They figure out a way to win come postseason time. So, to me, if there is a biggest favorite in a class right now, it'd be Brownstown Central.
All right, Greg, game of the year in the Big Ten tonight in Champaign at 7 o'clock?
Could be. But again, and I'm not trying to be a buzzkill on Purdue. I don't want to be that guy that doesn't have joy in being getting a part of another Big Ten championship. But I still I want them to be successful. But I'm still kind of like, all right, I've seen this script before. I want to see what you do in the NCAA tournament. So, yes, it is. It's great for Purdue if they win that game. But I'll be honest with you, my focus for this team is on what happens March 22nd and 24th, which will be the first and second rounds at Cambridge Fieldhouse.
Well, and I've been preaching to Boilermaker fans that it's okay for the moment to celebrate it in 4-8, for example. To celebrate that, let's say, again, another Big Ten conference tournament title, if that were to take place. I know all eyes are on the rest of March and then April, hopefully, for them. But It's okay to stop down for a moment and also reflect on the accomplishments that just continue to come with this program, Greg, and this particular group.
That's fair enough. But what I would also say is this. Even if they lose tonight in Champaign, I'm not going to say, here come the Boilermakers again, can't win in March. No, because, frankly, they've largely accomplished what they need to accomplish. Yes, you should celebrate winning the Big Ten regular season. If you win the Big Ten tournament, yes, you should celebrate winning the Big Ten tournament as well. But I really thought the most important thing for Purdue this year was to lock up that number one seed where you got to control your path and go through Indianapolis that first weekend. And they've done that. Unquestionably, Purdue is playing their first and second round games at Cambridge Fieldhouse a couple of weeks from now. And so, to me, almost anything that happens these next two games or next week in the Big Ten tournament is a bonus for Matt Painter's team.
Is this petition that's out to get Mike Woodson and it may just be one, and you know how I feel about petitions. The Jeff Saturday one around here just pissed me off, and you're looking at this one as well. Is it just a handful, or do you think it's more than just a handful that have decided to spearhead this attempt? And again, that's all this fan base needs is a reason to gripe at one another again, and that's what they got earlier today.
To be honest with you, I kind of thought that discussion as far as next year is concerned may have been ended by getting a couple of wins last week. And I'm not saying everything is fixed with Indiana basketball. Far from it. But, this was kind of pointing in the direction of calamity, at the end of the year. So I'm not saying, hey, you had an undefeated week. Yay, that should be good enough. I'm not saying that. But, again, let's get real. I think he's coming back next year, John.
So I know Joe Lunardi says this. Evidently, Jerry Palm says this. My motto has been win it to be in it. Is that what we're looking for from the Sycamores? Do they have to win it in St. Louis to be in it?
I think if they get to the championship game, they got a good shot. But if you're going to make it that far, might as well win the whole darn thing, right?
Yeah, I don't trust anybody. I mean, there are too many of these analytics nerds that follow this stuff a hell of a lot more closely than all of us are saying they're not. Even with the net ranking, which at last check was 29, to get that type of love and to get an at-large bid. So, yeah, I've said that all along, and I'm going to continue to say that. It's going to be rough, too. Team that goes, 6 or 7 maybe deep, 3 straight games, even against teams that you beat a couple of different times this year. That's going to be tough.
You and I got to see him, obviously, firsthand on Sunday, and we saw what makes them great, and we saw what is a flaw. And, again, They don't want to play more than 7, as simple as that. And I think, frankly, it kind of affects, even what they do defensively, just because they're not going to run the risk, if they can at all avoid it, of getting guys in foul trouble, because while those 7 players are interchangeable, they don't want to go further than that in terms of their bench. So you're right. 3 wins in 3 days is going to be difficult. But if they're knocking down jump shots, they can hang with anybody in the country. As simple as that.
Well, and we watched that up close and personal Sunday. It's almost weird anymore with the way coaches handle this when you see a player get 2 fouls and it's ho-hum, stay out there and play.
Right. And obviously I was listening yesterday when you and Matthew Graves were talking about it, where he's like, hey, we're not going to foul our own guy out of the game.
Yeah.
And it also helps when you've got, again, a veteran team that can handle situations like that. And necessity is also the mother of invention. If you feel you're not going to go very deep, you're not going to self-penalize unless you get to 3 in terms of fouls where you sit a guy down during the course of the half. So that's player responsibility saying, hey, we know we need you out there. You got to find a way to stay in the game with 2 fouls in that situation.
Hey, thanks for driving over there on Sunday. I had an outstanding day. I hope you did as well.
I absolutely did, and thanks to the good folks in Indiana State for the hookup. So thank you, John Sherman. Thank you, Corey Clark. Thanks, everybody that come up and said hello to us at the Ballyhoo. And next time we will leave earlier so we can spend more time at the Valley before we go to the game.
Well, when we saw Zionsville basketball's program there, we thought, well, maybe we should stay a little bit longer.
J.R. Howell and company were great. People.
Are you there, Greg? Did I lose you?
Apparently, like when I'm driving around the side of my house, that's like a cell phone dead zone.
Oh, cool.
Apparently. Sorry about that.
Go ahead. We only lost you for like 5 seconds. Go ahead and finish.
I was going to say, the amount of people that were buying you free drinks was crazy in the limited time we were at the Valley.
Beautiful. I love it there. Love Terre Haute. And how about the mayor? I thought the mayor was joking when he said, I'm the mayor. I said, yeah, me too. I'm the mayor, too.
I thought it was impressive that the mayor shaved for the first time on a Monday and won the election on a Tuesday. Because that's a young kid. He's clearly got a very bright future and a very bright person.
Yes.
But a little youngish for the mayor of Terre Haute. Yes, sir.
He just said, I'm the mayor of Terre Haute. And I said, yeah, I'm the mayor of Brazil. How you doing? I really am the mayor of Terre Haute. Yeah. So
I remember the story. I think he's 26, I think. So I remember the story. But it is stunning when he introduces himself to you and you're like, you're not the mayor. Come on. But no, it's legit. He's actually the mayor.
Hey, man, I appreciate it, too. That was a great time. And we'll talk again next week. Have a great week.
All right, thanks, buddy. You too.
It's Greg Rakestraw, the Andy Moore Automotive Group Hotline. Fantastic time at Terre Haute over the weekend. Quick break. We'll come back. The franchise tag to Michael Pittman Jr. What is the next deadline to reach a long-term deal? We'll tell you about that and more coming up next.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS.
Every day. Good. So what's the problem? I don't know.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
James over there, I'm John. The franchise tag, the non-exclusive franchise tag to Michael Pittman Jr. $21.8 million in 2024 is what that would equate to. The deadline to get, which is what they're working for right now, a long-term deal done is July the 15th. So basically what they did is they bought themselves some time, and you're talking about two sides that absolutely want to get something done, but they're buying that time. We'll talk about his value to this team in the 5 o'clock hour. Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Colts, will join us about that and more, again, coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Brad Spielberger, bottom of the four, and Bobby Riddell from the Boilermaker Radio Network still to come. Boilermakers on the road in Champaign tonight. Paul Casaro of Indy also on the show. Your chance to win some tickets as well. Don't go anywhere. It's 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
I'm from Perry Township, down on the
WHCX Indianapolis.
The Ride with JMV.
I don't know what the hell's in there. It's weird and pissed off, whatever it is.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, welcome back. Brad Spielberger, bottom of the hour, PFL. We'll talk about Michael Pittman Jr. with the non-exclusive franchise tag. That's worthy of $21.8 million this year. They're working with a long-term situation in mind. That deadline's not until July the 15th. Clearly, they just didn't reach a common ground where they are right now. Now, I will say this, that Pittman Jr. has the opportunity to receive other offers, but there is compensation, and I believe in terms of a couple of first-rounders, if the Colts wouldn't match an offer that came in. So it's pretty locked up that something longer term is going to get done, and both sides have talked about how much one wants to be here and they want him here. So, and I had mentioned a little bit earlier today that it kind of felt like it was going to be the franchise tag. If you didn't know earlier today, or we didn't get news about that by the midday, you kind of felt that was what they were going to use. But again, that is all in terms of working to get a long-term deal done with Michael Pittman Jr. And we'll talk about just exactly his value to this team. We'll talk about that. And the one thing that I want to know regarding Michael Pittman Jr. on the field, we know about the high volume in catches. But what about the yards after the catch, which to many seems to be an incredible rub? If you aren't altogether in on having him around or paying him, for example, $21.8 million, if you're not in on that, likely the reason behind that is the yards after the catch. Volume catches, the yards after a catch, not so much. And we'll talk to Shane Steichen about how that can be dealt with and change for the better. He's going to join us coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Paul Casaro, the head coach of Indy, also coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. I mentioned Brad Spielberger, bottom of this hour. Evan Sherrill's in studio, Cluster Truck. If you guys are watching via the AAA Membership Lounge, YouTube Live, we've got Eclipse viewing glasses right here. I'm kind of half-assedly putting these on over my face right now with the headphones on, but they're badass. We'll talk about that, courtesy of Cluster Truck, and the food that you can get with Evan in studio. Coming up a little bit later on, too, Greg Rakestraw. College and high school a moment ago. That podcast is at 1075thefan.com. Big one, maybe the biggest of the season of the Big Ten later on tonight. And a part of that on the call, along with Rob Blackman of the Boilermaker Radio Network. He is the former Boiler. He is the color analyst of the Boilermaker Radio Network. And, it is Bobby Riddell on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Bobby Buckets, as he's also referenced often, too, in Champaign. How you doing, Bobby?
Hey, JMV. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, we got a big one in Champaign here tonight.
Well, is it the biggest in the Big Ten this season, in your estimation, with all that ultimately is on the line, being at the end of the season, and really the hottest teams in the Big Ten, I guess you could easily argue right now without question?
Right. I suppose it has to be, right, as far as the implications with Illinois still clinging to hopes of, getting a share of the Big Ten championship if they can knock off the Boilers here tonight, and then hopefully win their final game at Iowa, along with Purdue losing at home against Wisconsin. Obviously, that's a lot that has to take place, but certainly not, not the craziest of scenarios. And, as you said, the two best teams in the Big Ten all year are now facing off. Of course, the first time Terrence Shannon wasn't in the full when that game was played at Mackey, so now Illinois has got their full complement of players for this repeat matchup here in Champaign. So, I think a lot of excitement as far as the implications with the Big Ten championship, and then of course, these are probably the two teams on paper as far as the Big Ten conference goes that have the best chance to go deep in March. So I think it's going to be an interesting matchup to watch.
Yeah, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. The first time out in that meeting you talked about with no Shannon at Mackey Arena, Boilers win it by 5. The thing that stood out to me is something I'm sure that Matt was not at all happy about. They gave up 46 in the second half of that game.
Yeah, no question. I mean, second half, the defense definitely got away from Purdue a little bit there. Illinois got it going offensively. Marcus Domask the transfer from Southern Illinois, who, of course, was teammates with Lance Jones last year, Purdue's guard at Southern. In that absence of Terrence Shannon, he really kind of ascended into that, bona fide go-to player, all Big Ten level player. And he's a tough cover, man. He's got that Jalen Pickett style for anyone who remembers Jalen Pickett from Penn State last year, that ability to kind of back you down, get to his spot in that mid-range area, just shoot over the top of you, use his strength and footwork around the rim. He's really crafty down there, and he's got a soft touch. And if you don't bring any help, he can score isolation really well. But if you do bring help, he's a very willing passer. And, of course, Illinois got a lot of talented perimeter players around him that can shoot, even more so now with Shannon. But, yeah, Domas got it going there at Purdue in that second half, and Purdue was fortunate enough to hold them off there and get enough stops down the stretch to get the W.
Bobby Riddell, the Boilermaker Radio Network. Purdue on the road in Champaign versus Illinois tonight. He's with us via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I mentioned also the last time out, Zach Edey, foul trouble, 10 points, 15 rebounds in that game. Far from what everybody around there has grown accustomed to, especially as of late. How'd they deal with him in that first game that may be carried over to round number 2 later on tonight in Champaign, Bobby?
Yeah, that was interesting, certainly, because Illinois goes with that starting lineup where they have Ty Rodgers, the sophomore kind of combo guard in there, combo forward, and he's played a lot of point guard for them this year. But Purdue went with a cross match and had Zach Edey guard him because he's not a 3-point shooter, and he was very successful to start the game. Illinois did not have a lot of success. Purdue built a substantial lead, and then Illinois went to more of their perimeter-oriented lineup, and Rodgers did not end up playing very much, just played roughly 13 minutes overall, and they tried to spread Purdue out, of course, and try to make Zach have to move on the perimeter a little bit more, and they certainly had some success there. From a plus-minus standpoint, Ty Rodgers was minus 23 in that first game, so that was obviously, he didn't have a lot of success, certainly, and it kind of played into Purdue's hands because Zach is just so big. If he's allowed to kind of stay around the rim and provide help guarding Ty Rodgers, that can help. But when they went to that small ball lineup, a lot of perimeter players, I think, it got Zach in a little bit of a precarious situation, and, picks up a couple fouls here or there. And, it was tough because, when he's not on the floor, Purdue obviously feels that impact, but you had to give major props to Trey Kaufman-Renn. His best game of the season by far, played 27 minutes and scored 23 points. Was 8 of 12 from the field, was just really good, kind of picking up the slack there with Zach saddled with foul trouble.
Bobby Riddell, the Boilermaker Radio Networks on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Here's a wild card for you, in really more ways than one. If you watched him play this year, Coleman Hawkins can do you a great deal of good, but man, he can also take that thing away. His personality is one, that is incredibly unique. But I will say this, when he's focused in and he wants to take it to you, he can absolutely do that, both inside and outside. Where does he rank on the list of things the Boilermakers are going to need to deal with well tonight?
No, for sure. He definitely ranks pretty high up there. He's a tough cover. He's got an effortless shooting stroke from the perimeter at his size, can really shoot the 3-ball well, and then has that ability at his size to put the ball on the floor too. He can be, a guy who gets rebounds and leads the fast break. That's what makes Illinois so good offensively. They have so many guys who can put the ball on the floor, lead the fast break. Of course, Terrence Shannon is a one-man wrecking crew in transition, very similar to what Jaden Ivey gave for Purdue a couple of years ago as far as that burst in the open floor. But Coleman Hawkins, his ability on defense, it's been surprising. Illinois really struggled from a defensive standpoint the last month or so. But he, as an individual, with his size, his ability to move his feet, can be a really good individual defender. Coleman Hawkins, definitely a polarizing guy. He obviously feels like he can be really hit or miss as a player. Feels like he's either really good or maybe his decision-making's poor and he's taking bad shots and maybe throwing the ball over the floor a little bit. So, Purdue's definitely hoping to get the bad Coleman Hawkins here tonight.
We just talked about the Kuzi list, and initially Braden Smith not being on it. now firmly being on it, but even elevating the conversation nationally about his game. How good – let's just go ahead and use that moment, if you will, as a benchmark, Bobby. How good has he been since – I don't know how much, fired up or how much more fired up he needs. He just kind of comes with that chip on your shoulder, ready to come at you. But how much have we seen him – how much better have we seen him get since that point in time when he was left off that list?
He's been fabulous, hasn't he? I mean, just playing at such a high level and obviously gets a lot of notoriety for his offensive game, and rightfully so. But because as a defensive player, he's probably been considered like an average defender throughout most of his career. But I also thought from a defensive standpoint this past game he was phenomenal as he got tasked with guarding Tyson Walker for quite a bit of that game. And I thought he did a really good job, kind of holding him in check. But offensively, just playing with so much confidence. I'm sure it's probably very similar to the confidence level he played with, when he was at Westfield. He's just, he's making great decisions for the most part, either shooting when the opportunity presents itself or creating for others. He's going to probably tonight break the single-season Purdue record for assists in a year, passing Bruce Parkinson likely this evening. So he's been phenomenal, and I think he does have that chip on his shoulder. It's kind of crazy because the guy won Indiana Mr. Basketball, right? But, he wasn't recruited super highly, just a 3-star recruit. Purdue fortunate enough to get him. And, then coming into the season, a lot of these preseason Big Ten lists, weren't even including him in like the top 25 players in the league. He gets left off that midseason koozie list after having a, really good first half of the year. And then he's just taken it up to another level. It's been phenomenal to watch, and played all 40 minutes against Michigan State, doing it on both ends of the floor. He's definitely become that legitimate 1-2 punch alongside Zach Edey.
It's Bobby Riddell joins us from the Boilermaker Radio Network. Big one tonight in Champaign. You can watch it on Peacock. My advice is to listen to Rob and Bobby on the Boilermaker Radio Network. He's live in Champaign on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. You often get this. I get this. I tell everybody to kind of soak it up a little bit and then move on. But just to say, for example, last year at this moment, you had a lot of the same really good things going on, a lot of the same circumstances we're talking about right now. And we know the Boilermaker fans really only care about what happens as we get further into this month. But I would ask you, at this point now, compared at this point to last year, give me some of the comparables here, some things that are the same, some things that are different, some things that are different for the better, if you will.
For sure. I mean, Zach Edey, of course, is his dominant self, just like he was last year. He was just so impressive last season, kind of coming onto the scene as a bona fide star, wins National Player of the Year, and he's kept that up, of course. He's only better than he was last year, and so that part has certainly been a constant. But, man, there's just so many other things around the team that I feel like has allowed this team to take an additional jump as far as the upside goes. They're shooting the three-point shot substantially better than last year. They're number 2 in the country at this point from a three-point percentage standpoint, number 1 in the Big Ten. So obviously, if you can surround the National Player of the Year on the interior with high-level three-point shooting, you got a massive recipe for success. And last year the three-point shooting was very inconsistent. The highs were pretty good, but the lows were insanely low, and Purdue's been able to avoid some of those lows, which of course gives you some optimism that when you get into the big tournament, that you maybe don't have one of those stinkers, because of course, as we know, in a one and done scenario, if you put up a stinker any particular day, it could be your time to go home. So hopefully, Purdue's improved shooting will really help. And then, I think the Lance Jones acquisition, as far as the ball handling goes, when you get into the tournament, guard play is so pivotal. And I think Purdue with Braden Smith and Lance Jones, Fletcher Lawyer having a nice bounce back game. They got 3 guys who can put the ball on the floor and make plays, and that helps Purdue be more matchup proof, I suppose, as far as playing different styles. Purdue was a very half-court oriented team last year. When teams tried to speed up the tempo, Purdue was not as equipped to be able to try to exploit that or take advantage of that. I think you saw that very much so in that first-round game last year. Really Dickinson really ramped up the full-court pressure, and Purdue, although they didn't turn it over a ton against the press, they were not able to exploit that pressure and get easy baskets off of it, just because a lot of that being personnel related. So I think Purdue's more equipped to be matchup proof, and Obviously, anything can happen in March, but I love where this team's at, and they have so many different scoring options. It's going to be fun to watch to see how the rest of the season unfolds.
Bobby, give me something that needs to improve. One thing that stands out that you would like to see improve, and I'm assuming improvement comes with a level of consistency within that improvement. What would that be?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, there's certainly been different things that have cropped up at different times throughout the season. I think just the turnovers and take care of the basketball is probably going to be just the one thing that needs to continue to improve. I feel like it has. It's gotten a little bit better, but still, overall, from a turnover margin standpoint, Purdue is 289th in the country. So, they're a team that doesn't turn other people over very much on the defensive end, which is, understandably so a little bit, because that's kind of the style Purdue plays defensively. They try to kind of pack it in, make teams beat you over the top or in the mid-range, try not to foul a lot, don't put you on the foul line, things of that nature. And so Purdue's not really getting out there and pressuring a lot, which is part of the style. But if you're not going to create turnovers on one end, you really got to make sure you take care of the ball on the other. And that's that area that Purdue has been very consistent. But I feel like they have gotten better as the years goes on. But as Purdue's shown a couple times this year in some of their losses, that they have those high turnover games where you get to 14, 15, 16 turnovers, you just put yourself in a really tough position, because you're now allowing the opposition to get out, get easier scoring opportunities in the open floor. You're not getting cracks at it on offense. And when you have Zach Edey and one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country and one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country, man, when you have a turnover, it's just like such a double negative, of course. And that's the area I would just like to see this team continue to clean up. And so when it comes to tournament time, they're keeping that turnover number at 12 or under. And I think at that point, Purdue becomes a really tough team to beat.
Yeah, to me, the thing that's really overwhelmingly interesting about tonight is, you mentioned that first game and that win in West Lafayette with no Terrence Shannon, and he being back tonight, and what type of focus and motivation you're going to see from that dude to go along with really his teammates that kept things a lot closer than what people would have thought well over a month ago in West Lafayette.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's going to be a really emotional atmosphere in Champaign tonight. I think they have 9 different guys walking for senior night. So just senior night alone, of course, it's going to be emotional.
But they're doing that afterwards, right? They do that after?
I think that's probably the case, that they'll do it after. But, it's obviously a big night for all those guys. And of course, then when you throw on top of it that they have a chance to maybe get a share of the Big Ten title if they can get the win tonight, and Terrence Shannon now getting his first crack at the Boilers. And of course, Purdue's been ranked, in the top 5 all season long for the most part. So it's one of those scenarios we've dealt with all year from a Purdue vantage point, that you're going to get, the other team's best ever for the most part. They're going to be pretty amped up to play you and try to pull off the upset. And it's going to be no different tonight. Illinois has got a lot to play for. They, of course, still want to try to improve their NCAA tournament seeding, try to maybe get one of those 3 or 4 seeds, and beating Purdue would go a long way for that.
Man, you got to make sure you're solidified, because of the one thing, it can be ho-hum when Purdue wins, and another conference title outright in the regular season, another conference tournament, ho-hum. But it's even worse if you trip it up. You know what I mean? You don't want to be tripping anything up right now, considering where you are in that national landscape as the number 1 overall selected seed, according to most of those that study those analytics as far as bracketology is concerned.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting, because obviously the calendar is turned to March, and so you really want to be peaking, starting to peak at this time. Of course, you would love to peak the most when the big tournament starts, but you definitely want to be playing some of your best basketball at this time of the year. And Purdue was happy to celebrate that at least minimum share of the Big Ten title when they beat Michigan State this past weekend. But Purdue definitely wants to win this thing outright. There's no question about it. So you want to be able to knock off this Illinois team on their home floor, clinch that outright title. That would be a really fun moment for this Purdue team that's already had a lot of them. But, on the flip side of it is, this game's kind of gravy, right, for Purdue. I mean, Purdue's probably looking at being a 1 seed in the Midwest region when the big tournament starts, regardless of how the rest of the season unfolds. I mean, there's still, I don't know what the bracketology experts would say, but Purdue's obviously got a really good resume. You got Houston looking at that South region. You got UConn looking for the East region. Those three teams have kind of separated themselves. So, Purdue's in a really fortunate spot. Purdue at this point can kind of just go for the gravy, I suppose.
All right, Bobby, are you there right now?
I am.
What do you do before the games? You hang out with anybody or sit alone by yourself in your room staring at the walls?
Well, I do bring the laptop along and do some of the day job stuff while I come on some of these road trips. So I keep up with that. And then, the team will have some film sessions, some meals that I'll pop along and enjoy with the rest of the radio crew and the staff. And so, just enjoying the trips, getting away, seeing these different Big Ten venues is always really fun.
Have a great time over there. Have a great broadcast, too. And tell Rob, friend of this show, we said hello, Bobby, okay?
I certainly will. Thanks, JMV.
Have a great broadcast. It's Bobby Riddell right there. Bobby Buckets, former Boilermaker, of course, a part of the Boilermaker Radio Network. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, Purdue, Illinois, Champaign, 7 o'clock. Television-wise, it is on Peacock. Game of the year. That should be good. Yeah, you look back at that first matchup and no Terrence Shannon, and Purdue gave up 46 in the second half. And no way that Matt Painter was happy with that. 46 in the second half without Shannon. And foul trouble for Edey. And a home win by 5 for the Boilers. Big news of the day, Michael Pittman Jr., the non-exclusive franchise tag, $21.8 million in 2024, as now the two sides, the reps for Pittman Jr., and then obviously Chris Ballard and the Colts try to reach some sought-after common ground for a long-term deal. This is just to buy some time. But that's where it is right now. And by the way, too, teams can offer money to him, and the Colts obviously can match. If they didn't match, then they'll get a couple of first-rounders, which obviously who's going to end up doing that? Nobody. They are in search of a long-term deal, but clearly just needing a little bit more time. July the 15th is when the deadline is to transform that from a franchise tag to a longer-term situation. Again, July the 15th is the deadline. So some time to work with, but I'm assuming sooner rather than later the Colts would like to get it done. Shane Steichen is going to join us, the head coach of the Colts. That's coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, so don't miss that. Evan Sherrill of Cluster Truck is in studio. The microphone's in front of his face right now. Evan, what do we got on tap today in the bag right there, brother? What we got?
Got your favorite blackened mahi sandwich. Jasmine rice.
Good, baby.
I messed up and got black beans. Fixed it, got red potatoes, so you have both of those.
I like black beans too, though. That's all good, though.
Yeah.
That's good.
I remember that from last time, so there's a little slip up there on my part, but, 2 items, that you like. So
my man, I thank you very much. How are things going with the Cluster Truck?
Good. We're got an exciting March ahead of us. Like I said a couple of weeks ago, maybe we're dropping a Dunk Fest special for March Madness.
Yep.
Just did a photo shoot yesterday with John Michael Malloy, Jalen Thomas, and Riley Makalewski of Butler men's and women's basketball.
Right on.
So that was very exciting. And continuing to advertise on here, we're doing a couple giveaways with you.
I think JMM's getting ready to walk it as a senior, is he not? And be done with his career here.
Him and Jalen have a senior night on Wednesday.
Right.
I was telling my wife we might have to get tickets to that one. I've never been over to Hinkle for a game before. So
JMM and JMV always seem like a hell of a combination right there.
Yeah.
So good for you with Cluster Truck. That's not bad at all.
Yeah. It's been cool to, we've done a couple spots with John Michael Malloy.
Mm-hmm.
Did something with Jeremiah Jackson of Butler football. Did some Butler women's lacrosse last year. So it's been cool to engage with the community a little bit over in Broad Ripple.
All right. Some of the most popular menu items that you have right now. Throw them out to the people listening.
Yep. We still got our seared walleye. It's a wild-caught walleye. I'm not a huge fish person, but, that's a good option for sure. My favorite I brought for James today, this was one that was one that I was eating from Cluster Truck way before I even knew that they had a marketing role available. It's the Lazy Breakfast Burrito. It is a top seller. I always get it without peppers and onions, so that's how I got it for you today. That is my go-to.
Is it just packed full of breakfast items?
Yeah, we got real eggs.
Love
so
real
I
eggs.
have to say real because you never know, but real eggs scrambled, chopped bacon, pico de gallo that's made in-house, cheddar jack cheese, and then it comes with those sliced peppers and onions as well.
Go with it, buddy.
Yeah.
Well done, James.
Tater tots as well. Sorry, that's in there.
Can't
as well.
forget the tots.
I'm going to tell you what, if you got tater tots are always better than the fry angle, right? I mean, any fry, I'm big on crinkle fries, but the tater tots are always the best because it takes us back to when we were in elementary, and we always had tater tots. Always the best. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're very good. I have to add it with every meal. It's very good. We do have Sidewinder fries as well if you, are fries over tots, but I am tots over fries.
Me
for
too.
Sure.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you?
Clustertruck.com. Download our app. Free delivery from Fountain Square all the way up through Carmel, Broad Ripple, Castleton, Little Flower. I'm trying to convince everybody to get over to Irvington. So
Trying to get down to the south side one of these days, too. We got to get down to my south siders.
Absolutely.
You got to go really far down to get to me, though.
Yeah. What, Bargersville, correct? That's,
yeah.
We'll be
you know where
working,
Mallow Run is down there? The winery?
I do not.
You don't? Yeah, the
I have heard of
winery.
that,
I'm really
yes.
close to that. So, yeah.
Okay, cool.
You get pretty far down there. So they can get a hold of you that way in clustertruck.com.
Clustertruck.com. Use code THEFAN for 25% off, 25 or more.
Do that, too. The code THEFAN is what you use.
Absolutely.
25% off, $25 or more. That's Evan Sherrill, everybody. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you, JMV. I know it's a packed show. I really appreciate it.
I love it. We got to get you right in front of Brad Spielberger and Shane Steichen, okay?
Absolutely.
You're in a good spot right here. You're kind of like when they used to do must-see Thursday night, it would go Friends, The Single Guy, Seinfeld, and Suddenly Susan. So you're kind of like the single guy right here. There's nothing wrong with being the single guy.
That is
right.
very generous.
Oh, good.
I'm hoping my wife wasn't listening for this one, though.
Not the single guy, literally. And I know Jonathan Silverman is kind of a nerd, but it was, it had its moments, I guess. The single guy. It's must-see TV right here.
Okay.
Thanks, Evan. I appreciate you. Evan Sherrill of Cluster Truck. Clustertruck.com. Again, 25% off, $25 or more that you order when you use that promo code THEFAN, clustertruck.com. Brad Spielberger further explains the tool that Chris Ballard talked about last week and the player that Shane Steichen will reference coming up here in the 5 o'clock hour. Michael Pittman Jr., the non-exclusive franchise tag. Brad Spielberger converses about that from Pro Football Focus with us next.
Hey, guys, looking for a reason to...
The cream, yeah. The cream of the crop. And there is no one that does it better.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
My thanks. Greg Rakestraw a little bit earlier talked college and high school. So basically, as I have remarked, Indiana State gets in if they win it. Missouri Valley Conference Tournament, Arch Madness in St. Louis, beginning for them on Friday. That needs to be a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday scenario. Let's not jack with it. Make sure you're in. Bobby Riddell, Boilermakers, Fighting Illini, Boilermaker Radio Network, alongside Rob Blackman from Champaign tonight. Hell of a big deal right there. And the non-exclusive franchise tag for Michael Pittman Jr. Colts wide receiver Shane Steichen joins me coming up here at the top of the hour. We shall discuss that, his value, and even more so than that, the question all of you have asked me, all right, with this plus $21 million non-exclusive franchise tag value here, we know that he has a high volume catching the football. Where's the yak? Yards after the catch. We'll talk to Shane Steichen about that coming up at the top of the hour. But on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, to help us even further sort this out from Pro Football Focus, Brad Spielberger is with us. So the first time in 11 years, Brad, today the Colts utilized the franchise tag. Last time out, 2013, it was worth Pat McAfee and $2.9 million, a hell of a lot more as it stands right now. But both sides seem to be still working towards some common ground for a long-term situation. What do you think of the news of the day that as we got later in the day, it was expected?
Yeah, I think it is interesting, and it's important to note that they have not used a tag in 11 years. And obviously, I'm sure if you look back at every single season, maybe they just never had a strong candidate to do so. But
that is true. That's the truth of it right there, and you're right, yes.
Yeah, so obviously that's a big part of it. But also, I think it does speak to that they try to get deals done where they can. I'm not saying they're not fans of Michael Pittman, but I do think they're in an interesting spot now where, look, we're going to see the market pushed really, really far forward with Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb and some other Brown Ayuk in San Francisco or elsewhere and some other players. And so, we've talked a lot about Michael Pittman throughout the course of the year. Very, very good player, no doubt about it. But I think the biggest thing you've seen across the NFL with this receiver market, especially when the draft classes are as good as they've been, and this upcoming year, some people are saying might be the best draft class of all time at wide receiver, is teams are reluctant to pay kind of that 1B to the 1A type of guy. And I do think Pittman falls in that category. And so it becomes fascinating. So anyway, I think the two sides will work. I think from the agent side, you're sitting there saying, let Justin Jefferson get 30-plus mil, let CeeDee Lamb get 30-plus mil per year. Let all these deals roll in, and we'll just sit back. And then, not even that we can ask for more, but our number just looks better and better in the marketplace. So, yeah, I think they will try very hard to get a deal done. I wouldn't be shocked if we're waiting until July, and things continue to just develop slowly.
Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, with us. Both sides. I'll talk to Shane coming up at the top of the hour. Chris last week on the morning show with Swebo when they were at the Combine, had mentioned Chris Ballard, how much they want him back and how much they value him. Is there any surprise whatsoever that the common ground that I described a moment ago was not found prior to this deadline?
Not really. I just think it's a very, very tough line to navigate right now. I think there's also probably a reason why I went down to the wire. Some teams had it done a couple days ago, weeks ago, earlier in the day, and obviously this one was the last one announced. So I think they're probably not that far apart, compared to some other contract negotiations. Most notably, T. Higgins and the Bengals, I think are probably miles and miles apart. I think they just need more time. I think it's just hard to get these things done, this early in the offseason.
Is this a proper value? What do you value, contractually speaking, monetarily speaking, the production of Michael Pittman Jr.? And really, Brad, come from a place like we come from around here. Well, you got to surround Anthony Richardson with talent. And he's been there. You can count on him. That's kind of the song and dance we pull off here. But somebody that crunches the numbers, the analytics like you do, is his value equal to the amount of money either with his franchise tag you're seeing right now or, ultimately what's going to be a long-term deal with the Colts? Is that value even to you?
Yeah, so the position is extremely valuable and extremely important. I have no issue paying Michael Pittman. Hypothetically, I know it sounds crazy, but just paying him $22 million for one season, it's not ideal. It's not what you want to do, but it's not this horrible scenario where you're overpaying a guy or the tag is way above what his actual market value is. If it does come to that, and that's how it plays out, I think it makes more sense than some other scenarios where a tag seemed like probably, not used correctly. So I don't mind that. I would rather get a deal done. I do think the thing for me is, I would want him to still be in the $22, $23 million per year range. And that doesn't sound like a lot. It is a lot, but that's below all the second-round picks from last year. That's, your DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, the other guys, Terry McLaurin. Those guys that got 23, 24 a year. We know the cap has spiked exponentially. We know everybody's contracts always go up. And I recognize all those things. I just, like I've said, I don't view him quite as a guy that you're going to say, yeah, we're going to pay top of market for this guy. I think he is a 1A, or 1B, not necessarily a 1A type of guy.
Yeah, would there be a lot of interest? Let's just say, for example, I guess he is on the market, but obviously it would take a hell of a lot to reel him in under the non-exclusive franchise tag here. But what would be his value? We know how the Colts evidently value him. Does he have a similar value in other spots around the NFL, Brad?
Yeah, look, I do. I think he's a player held in high regard, no question about it. But I do think that is kind of a common sentiment. And that's the market we've seen is that, look at Mike Evans today. I know the initial reporting was insane. It comes out he actually signed a 2-year deal for $41 million. It's a good deal. But, $20.5 million, it's not pushing anything forward. There's a bunch of incentives to juice that up, of course, but I think they're going to be pretty difficult to attain. They're tied to making the playoffs and all these things that, I know the Bucs just did that, but it's never a guarantee. So, yeah, I think he is viewed in a very positive light, but I think the main thing right now across the NFL, the main trend is you pay your elite top 15 guy, and then you try to go cheap and go in the draft. And the question is, where is the line that you draw where you fall in that bucket or you don't? And I think you might see a record for top 100 draft picks at the position, and that doesn't help the free agent.
So Brad Spielberger, a Pro Football Focus, and again, Michael Pittman Jr., the non-exclusive franchise tag. At the deadline a little bit earlier today, and his head coach Shane Steichen joins us at the top of the hour. And one of the things I mentioned before I brought you on, one of the questions I have for Shane Steichen is going to be, all right, high volume pass catcher, not high volume in terms of yards after the catch. How do you deal with that if you're the Colts? I'll ask him that, obviously, with his offensive scheme in mind, but how do you think they deal with that, Brad, trying to upgrade that yards after the catch to be a little bit closer to the volume amount of catches he has every game?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You can't change the athlete. And, again, he's not a bad athlete. I feel like I'm maybe coming off a little bit too critical of Michael Pittman. He's a phenomenal football player, but go look at his combine testing. It wasn't good. It's like he is who he is to a degree. And I think you actually did see him this year force more missed tackles in space. I think he did a good job this year of you could tell he had a plan as he was catching the football, where he was going to take his first step. The first defender he was trying to make miss, and he did that without having some of those focus drops, right? Where I think if guys sometimes they think too far ahead, they take their eyes off the football because they're already thinking about the first move they're going to make or the first defender they're trying to avoid, and they drop the ball. So you didn't see that. But, yeah, he's not going to turn into a 4-4 guy in year 5. It's just not going to happen.
So Brad Spielberger with us. You mentioned that T. Higgins, there's a wide gap between, what the Bengals want to do and what T. Higgins wants because they were so close. And really a lot of us in that particular draft, Brad, we felt had T. Higgins not been selected, T. Higgins would end up here. What is the gap between the two players, if there is a gap between the two players? Where's the value with both there in terms of putting them together? Just because, contracts are up and they both got the franchise tag.
Yeah, so I don't think it's this massive gap per se, but I do think T. Higgins is the downfield threat, the ability to make plays, near the sideline and over the middle in traffic, the go up and get it ability, the explosiveness, the burst is just a little bit different and a little bit better from T. Higgins. So, again, not that Pittman can't be a downfield threat. And a ton of this is tied to the quarterbacks he's played with. And I'm sure getting a healthy Anthony Richardson to throw him the football, his average depth of target will go up. But, with Higgins, you're talking about a guy whose average depth of target is 14, 15 yards downfield. And with Pittman, it's 9 or 10. So, again, not entirely his fault, not entirely because of, what he's doing out there. But I think that's the big thing is it's harder to replace, a big-bodied speedster with good ups that can make plays down the field.
We know now what has transpired in Denver with Russell Wilson. Does that make that deal with Seattle the worst deal of all time for a team?
I think it's an argument for sure. And it's funny because I think that we have a battle going on with Deshaun Watson as we speak. But, yeah, I do think that you could make the argument, no question about it. You fold in the trade, the draft capital, the players that went to Seattle, and then obviously $124 million in cash to Russell Wilson for, pretty much nothing. Yeah, it might be the worst trade in NFL history.
Answer me this. What do you think he ends up? Does he play this year?
So this is going to be fascinating because he's owed $39 million from Denver this year, and any money he earns elsewhere would be offset against that amount. So no one's going to pay him more than that, right? So I think there are going to be teams that try to convince him, look, Russ, we'll pay you a very small amount. The savings we get from not paying you will get you some offensive linemen. We'll get you some receivers. We'll build up a defense. We'll build a very, very good team with the savings we have from not paying you. And I think if he's open to that idea, I'm talking like 1 year, $5 million, then I think a lot of teams might say, you know what, let's take this risk. He wasn't that bad last year. There are some limitations. The quick game's not really there. You can't throw over the middle of the field all that often, but still throws a beautiful deep ball down the sidelines, made some plays last year, avoided pressure, and had some good, late in the shot clock magic that we've seen him do throughout his NFL career. For a very low price point, I think some teams will be interested. Who that is, I'm not really sure. Does a Pittsburgh get in the mix there? The issue with Russ, I think, is we've heard this from Cam Newton and others. I don't think he's wired to, be a backup. And it's not an excuse. It's real. The guy is a leader. The guy is a first one in, last one out. All these things. I think you've even heard some guys that have been good backups just talk about knowing how to come in the building. It's not your team. You're not the top dog. It's hard to make that adjustment, and I don't know if he can.
So, Brad Spielberger, final thing with you. Your impressions overall in the NFL Combine and moments and players, and especially, Brad, your evaluation of the wide receiver position. What stood out?
Yeah, it was great. Indy's the best. I hope it never leaves Indy. There were a couple notable performances. Obviously, the receivers had a couple headlines. Xavier Worthy from Texas running the new record, the 4.2140. I think he was already a fringe late first-round pick. I think he probably solidified that, now just because of how fast he is. I think Braden Fisk out of Florida State, that's a big D tackle, had one of the best combines of any player. You see his effort and intensity on tape, and now to match that with that athleticism, I think he's probably a top 50 pick. And then, the receiver class. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. at LSU running a 4.33 at 6'4", I think 218 pounds, something like that. He's now a top 20 pick lock. There are so many good receivers in this class. Like I said, I think it really, we'll see how it plays out in the NFL. But prospect-wise, I think you might have a case. It's the greatest prospect class at the position we've ever seen.
All right, so number 15 overall with the Colts, where it's really tough to find, especially on the open market, an edge rusher, where you may have a guy like Turner being there, you may have a cornerback there, and you have, as you mentioned, you're going to have a ton of wide receivers there. Is this a situation where you go away from wide receiver and because of the depth of that position, pick it back up later on in the draft? If you're the Colts, how do you handle 15, for example, right now?
Yeah, I think I would. And obviously there's probably fans listening saying, well, yeah, they do that with Pittman and Pierce and Downs, get a stud. But I think you're going to get a very, very good football player in the second. If I'm the Colts, Quinyon Mitchell, to me, is just a perfect match. He also had a great combine. He's the highest-graded corner in the last 2 seasons for PFF in college, which is an insane thing to accomplish out of 1,000 corners in college football. And just such a special talent. And then you mentioned Dallas Turner at Alabama. like I think the edge run is going to start in that range, like around maybe the 14th pick with New Orleans. We might not get a defensive player until that range. I really do feel that way. So, yeah, if you're sitting there and it's like, hey, our number one edge in the class is on the board at 15, yeah, make that pick. I have no problem with it.
That's Brad Spielberger of PFF. People can find your work. I'm assuming you got a lot of info right now.
We got a lot coming out. Yep, over at pff.com. Cover the franchise tags today. Everything free agency this next week, so come check it out.
You got it, Brad. I appreciate you, man. We'll do it again.
Sounds great. Thank you.
It's Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus. I always do that. That's weird, man. You know what that is? It's because the phone bank used to be right here, and I would hang up on them. And that's what I do here. Weird. Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, the non-exclusive franchise tag going for the first time to a Colts player in 11 years to Michael Pittman Jr. today. More of the numbers on that. Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Colts, joins me coming up at the top of the hour. Paul Casaro, the head coach of Indy, at the bottom of the 5 o'clock hour. My advice, don't go anywhere. Tickets to give away, too. It's 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Want more speed?
He's my homeboy, my rotten soldier. He's my sweet cheese, my good time boy.
93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
It is Brad Spielberger at Pro Football Focus. The non-exclusive franchise tag of Michael Pittman Jr. is what we talked about with him. The Colts and his rep still trying to work on something long-term, but that's where it stands today. I thought, again, I'd mentioned to people around here that if this thing went past the noon hour, that they would, I mean, I guess you have no choice if you're still going through the negotiation process, but the number for the franchise tag is $21.8 million in 2024. And again, what they're working for here is a long-term situation. The deadline for that is July the 15th. Now, there can be some offers thrown at Michael Pittman Jr., but if somebody were to do that, the Colts could match, and if the Colts didn't, they'd end up getting a couple of first-rounders. So obviously the price tag is going to be way too high for that. This is utilized to give them more time. And you know, I mean, trying to figure out exactly how you're working, you know, others in with this amount of money and the salary cap in mind, especially those where, again, I think it's going to be a lot of their own coming back. A lot of you at the end of this are going to say, look, this is a reboot. As much as you want to see maybe things change, not even a great deal, but a little bit, I think that the value of what they're looking at now, especially at the beginning of free agency, is going to be of their own. Yeah, the other thing I'm kind of curious about moving forward is that of Gardner Minshew. Now, his value last year we saw, and where that value is going to be this year. Now, again, when Shane Steichen joins me, it's not like he's the guy dealing with that like the general manager, Chris Ballard, is, but a lot of what I want to hear from him is, you know, the value that he sees in making sure Michael Pittman Jr. is around, in making sure you still have an adequate backup to Anthony Richardson, and then, you know, making sure your quarterback remains healthy. How do you do that without sidetracking a lot of that value, a lot of the reason why you wanted him in the first place? And a conversation coming up with the head coach of the Colts, Shane Steichen. Paul Casaro, UND, bottom of the hour. Shane Steichen, Colts head coach. You will not want to miss it. That's coming up next.
The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy.
Talk about it, 7 a.m. right here on The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, welcome back to the show. And I really wanted to do a face-to-face. And last week during the Combine, he was sick. But joining us now is the Colts head coach, Shane Steichen, normally on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, but in studio now. Hey, Shane, thank you for the time, and thanks for being with me here in studio. I'm curious, off the jump here, the franchise tag for Michael Pittman Jr., what does he mean to this team? Just beyond the numbers, beyond the finances, what does he mean to this group moving forward?
Yeah, I think Pitt, first of all, the person that he is, just the ultimate competitor, leader, playmaker. He's the same guy every day in the building, the way he works, the way he practices, and then it shows up. And he makes plays for us on Sunday and just super reliable for us, and love everything about it. You have more of a role for him in mind with this offense? Because we got kind of a small thumbnail sketch with Richardson this year. Do you have more of a increased role in mind for him too? We're working through that this offseason. We're trying to obviously evolve too. Every year we're trying to evolve. You know, we have our system in place, but as coaches, you're always trying to stay on the cutting edge offensively because the game's always changing. So we're always looking at new ideas. Obviously, the stuff that we did, we want to continue to do that, but obviously involve as an offense, as coaches and players to get these guys the ball any way we can. He is Shane Steichen with us. I'm curious, too. There's been some things made about yards after the catch isn't there. The volume of catches is there. How do you work? Is there a way you can work on that to where there's more yards after the catch opportunities for him to coincide with the high volume of catches he has in general? That's what I was talking about. I mean, we're looking at that stuff this offseason. I'm trying to get those run after catch opportunities, obviously with the scheme that we have, and obviously you got to catch the right coverage sometimes for that stuff to work. So you try tirelessly to get that stuff done when you're going through your process and game planning. How do you like your wide receiving core right now? I like it. Obviously, Pittman's a really good football player. Downs had a huge year as a rookie that we're really excited about. Alec Pierce is coming along as well, going into year 3. Made some big plays down the field for us. So it's good. It's good. Do you look back at film from last year, for example, with that group in mind, and think, you know what? This may work out better with these guys, after a year, or, maybe take from the film and then add to what you think that they can do individually and collectively? Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that's real. I think obviously as you get to know these players better, you get to know their strengths even more after a year, and the chemistry that you build as coaches and players with these guys, I've put in position to go make those plays. And I think with anything, you look at the teams that have had so much success over the years, even Dayton. I always look back at this team with Peyton and Marvin and Reggie and like how long they played together, you know what I mean? And that continuity that they had and understanding the system and being on the same page. And I think when you develop that with the guys that you got on your roster that you like, I think it could be special. So Shane Steichen's with us. This has been made to be one of the deepest pools at wide receiver in this draft upcoming we have seen. Does anything stand out to you about this group? I don't know how much you've seen. I know you missed the Combine because you were sick last week, but just in film and what you know about this group, does anything stand out about what you guys could have and add to the team if you choose to go that direction? Yeah, it is a deep group. I have had a chance to watch a good chunk of these guys on tape, and there's different body types, right? There's speed guys, there's possession guys, there's all-around guys that can do it all. And it is a deep group, so we got to do a good job, obviously, not just with the wide receivers. We're obviously just trying to add talent wherever we can get better. But we got to do a good job evaluating these guys, and if we did draft a wide receiver whenever, you know what I mean, if it happens in this draft, who knows if it will, we try to get the right guy. Hell of a segue. I'm curious, what impresses you about that position? Like, what is the first thing you go, if you have an oh wow in you, oh wow, this is what stands out. What is it? Explosive playmaking ability, a guy that can make a catch, make a guy miss, and go, take a home run. Those are big. But really, on top of that, that's the first thing that probably jumps off on tape. But then you got to look at the whole picture. Is this guy how does he run his routes? Is he smooth coming in out of breaks? What can you do with this player in the system that you run? And I think in the NFL, a lot of teams run similar plays, right? It's how do you do them better, and how do you put those guys in position to make those plays on a weekly basis. But you got to play to those players' strengths. Whoever that guy is.
This may be kind of a random question. Shane Steichen joins us. I look at it in terms of basketball. Before you came in, we were talking about Larry Bird, and Larry Bird playing basketball was always 2 and 3 steps ahead of everybody else. I thought that's what made him so unique, and elite-level players, that is a uniqueness quality there. How do you stay steps ahead of the defense in the play calling and then managing the team as the head coach? How do you do that? How do you try to do that on the sideline?
I think it's a lot of preparation that goes into it. I think that part is done during the week. Your process that you go through, and then obviously in the game, you got to feel that. You got to feel the game, and you got to call the game with a feel to it. You have these, statistics of, hey, they play this coverage on this down and distance and this and that. Well, sometimes you got to feel the game, and sometimes that coordinator's feeling the game too. So it is a little chess match there, but the in-game adjustments are huge, definitely in between series. You know what I mean? You have your in-game adjustments, at halftime, but it really happens during the game in between series. So relying on the coaching staff that I have, Jim Bob, our offensive coordinator, along with the rest of the offensive staff, making those in-game adjustments so we can be on it for the next series.
How often do you feel that you know what a team's going to do before they actually do it, with that preparation in mind?
It's a great question. Sometimes you guess right, sometimes you don't, But, sometimes it works out. It does. And you got to feel, and sometimes you hit it right, and sometimes you don't. And then sometimes you got, guys to go make plays for you. And it's like, oh, that's a great call. Well, I don't know if it really was a good call, but they made a play for us.
Shane Steichen's in studio with us. So, obviously, you've seen enough about Anthony. Some of the things you saw in that short term before that injury, and then playing off of that, some of the ideas you have popping around in your head about how you can better utilize him coming up this year.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of thoughts that go through your head when you got a player like Anthony and just his explosive playmaking ability that he brings. So we're going through that process right now, this offseason, looking at certain things that he can do that we can add, to his repertoire, and we're looking forward to it.
Stacking the box against him would seem like that's what a defense would want to do. How do you make sure that he gets that type of freedom that you want in his playmaking ability?
Yeah, I think when teams stack the box, obviously you got to know when they're doing it, right? And then that way you can push the ball down the field. Obviously, you get some single high coverages and you get your one-on-ones on the outside, and you got to take advantage of that stuff. So if teams want to do that with him, we got to take advantage of it on the outside.
How's he feeling right now, by the way?
He's doing great. He's in great spirits. His rehab's going great. You've seen, obviously, probably on social media that he's starting to throw, and he's feeling really good.
Would you like to see Gardner back here again for another year?
I love Gardner. What Gardner did for this team when Anthony went down was special. So really excited about Gardner, and we'll see where it goes.
Do we underestimate the value that he brought? I mean, obviously for face value, we saw him be successful in quarterbacking a team where he was the backup going in. But what was his value beyond what we watched?
Yeah, I think the behind-the-scenes stuff that people don't know, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Obviously, the fans and everyone sees, what guys do on game day. But, in this building, what he does from a preparation standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from a locker room standpoint, the way he prepares, the way he sees the game, the way he talks about the game, is huge. And like I said, what he was able to do for us this past year, stepping into that role, was awesome to see.
Shane Steichen's in studio with us, the head coach of the Colts. You made some changes as far as the staff is concerned. Gus is still around defensively. Where do you guys have to get better in terms of just overall defense? What are you looking for this year?
Obviously, we're trying to improve in all areas, not just defense, offense, special teams, everything, right? We want to get better in all three phases, and we're going through that. We're going through our self-scout process, like I said. We're going to start looking at the numbers here, this week, next week, and then obviously just diving through the tape and just seeing little areas that we need to improve on and make sure we're better.
Jonathan Taylor, you're going to get full time now to be able to work with this guy, and it was expedited certainly for you a year ago. How's that going to be, and what's going through your mind about being able to utilize him even more so in this offseason?
Yeah, super excited to get him for a full season coming up this year, and obviously an offseason with him is going to be big. But to have him on our roster, the playmaker that he is special, and to have him and Anthony in the backfield together, I couldn't be more excited about that.
You like where the offensive line is right now across the board?
I do. I think our offensive line did a hell of a job last year. Obviously, Tony Sperano, our line coach, did a great job with those guys. preparing those guys every week to go play and fight and scratch and claw. And the way we were able to run the ball was awesome to see. And Ryan Kelly and Quentin Nelson and Bernie and all those guys and Braden Smith and Will Fries, like those guys are just they battle, and really excited about that group.
Hey, Shane, playmaking ability is at such a premium everywhere. When you look at tight end, where do you want to see this group get better? And do you think you have it on the roster right now, or do you think you need to try to find that in this draft?
Yeah, I like our group that we have right now. Obviously, not just tight ends, but with anything, right? You're always looking to improve anywhere you can on the roster. But I like the guys that we have. Will Mallory made a big jump for us as a rookie this past year, pass catching. Some things there, and then obviously Kylan Granson and Heaven Moe and those guys, and they kind of it was just a really selfless group, and they went out and they did their job, and sometimes, Moe caught 4 balls, and the next week Granson caught 4, and maybe they didn't catch any that week, but they just did their job, and Tommy Manning, our tight end coach, did a heck of a job with those guys.
Shane, when did the game slow down for you as a coach? I mentioned it a little bit earlier, you're the coach, the managing the offense, all that. When did it start to slow down for you? Much like if you were a player, the game slows down for you as well.
You're talking about just last year?
Yeah, just in general term. Was it like week 1?
I don't know. It's probably a couple weeks into it, mid-season. You know what I mean? You get a feel and a flow in operation. Kinda? You get a little groove, and you get your operation and your communication on how you're communicating with the staff. And until you actually do it, you don't really know. So obviously you put yourself through that in the preseason and going through that process. But then once you get into a groove, about mid-season, I kind of say this all the time about football teams. You kind of find out who you are as a football team about mid-season.
There are moments. Colts fans would know it if there was a moment for you that stands out where you go, all right, well, this is where I am right now. I got through this. Kind of that first moment of being a coach in the NFL that stood out, that impressed you the most, where you were able to see the game slow down moving forward as a coach. Any moment stand out to you? Any coaching situation, any game?
I don't know. We had some situational stuff come up, which was crazy. We had the one against New England and Germany, where it was the end of half, and it was like 4th and 4 on our minus 46, and we were trying to get a down timeout situation, and it was kind of like, oh shoot, we better complete this ball, because if not, they can flip it around, and we only have 12 seconds. We completed it. It worked out. Boom. And then the following week, guess what happened? Shoot, we get the bye, we come back, we play Tampa Bay at home, and it's the same exact situation with 7 seconds. We had a little less time, but the ball was on the minus 49, and here we go. Instead of being, of course it had to be 4th down again, because that's usually how it works, right? Instead of being 1st or 2nd, it's 4th and 3 or 4th and 4. And so we went for it again, and same situation, but we were ready for that situation, and we practice those things all the time, and it came up again, and we were able to execute it and get a down timeout situation.
That's what I'm talking about, though. That's trying to be a step or two ahead. I think that's where you go. You see a lot of elite level players do it, but that's how you find that elite status, right? If you're ahead of what they're trying to do and counter to you. Do you take away all those facts from game to game, kind of log them in your mind to be even more useful for it further down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you go back in the offseason and you watch all those situations. You watch them over and over again, and not only that, you watch them around the league, and you kind of put yourself in those situations on, hey, here's what so-and-so did against this team. Shoot, let me put myself in that situation. If we were there, what will we do here in this situation? So you kind of put yourself through, you coach yourself through those situations, so when they do come up on game day, obviously you got to be ready for them, because you got to make these decisions very quickly.
He is Shane Steichen in the studio. A couple more things, I'll let you go. Anybody you lean on for advice? Anybody that you look to as a former coach where you go, yeah, that's kind of how I want to be, and you really take their advice to heart? Anybody immediately pop into your mind?
Yeah, I've said this before. Norv Turner's a guy that I go back to. I got in the league with Norv in 2011. He got me on with the Chargers on the defensive side of the ball, and that was probably one of the best things for my career personally, growth-wise, that helped me, was being on the defensive side of the ball and seeing that for 2 years, seeing how defenses play, offenses, how they look at it, and then be able to flip back. But just being around him when he was the head coach there, and then got a chance to go with him to Cleveland when he was the offensive coordinator, and then really work hand in hand with him, because I flipped back to offense, and just seeing how he saw the game and see how he operated as a head football coach, and just the person that he was as a football coach. So still talk to him quite a bit.
So, Shane, you've shown up at Mackey. You've been to Hinkle. I'm assuming at some point maybe you hit Assembly Hall. Mm-hmm. And if you want to ride over to St. Louis, we can watch my Sycamores play hopefully on Sunday, right? So are you there just as a fan, or do you also kind of watch the whole coaching aspect of a completely different sport from yours?
It's interesting you say that because I went as a fan, like,
Yes.
I'm just going to go check these out, but I catch myself looking at the bench a lot and seeing how the coaches are operating down there. But shoot, both those atmospheres, going up to Purdue and going to the Butler game and just seeing the history and the tradition of basketball here in Indiana is awesome to see. It's pretty special. You can kind of feel it, the history, being in those stadiums. So it's been a great experience, going to those games.
It is, and it's tough to explain to people, and obviously everybody in this room will know it too, but it's just different here, especially high school-wise. I don't know if you went to a high school game at all.
I've seen these stadiums now. These high school stadiums look like college stadiums. It's
Noblesville was ridiculous this past weekend. Like where I'm from in southern Indiana, in Lagodi, they had 5 overtimes in a gym that seats 4,000 and probably had 5,000 plus in it, fire marshal rules and stuff.
Yeah.
But it is different here. But I was always curious with you, and really other coaches for that matter, if you can take anything away from just observing. Because I'm assuming you probably can't get too far away from trying to gather information and being a coach. Is there stuff you can observe in different sports from what you see and how coaches handle different situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously, I'm not an expert in coaching basketball, but just seeing how those basketball coaches handle different situations that come up, how they handle the bench, when things aren't going good, when they're using their timeouts. Obviously, I'm not in the huddle. I don't know what they're saying to those guys, but I do look at that and kind of see how they handle really the team from the sideline.
So, Shane Steichen, you were, according to the NFLPA, you got an A as far as how you're handling this team. Is that something you look at? Will you look at and evaluate all the grades you have with the NFLPA?
Yeah, we look at that stuff. We're always trying to improve on anything. Even at the end of the year, I talk to the players, when I have the exit meetings on what we can improve on, whether it's, anything, myself, the organization, just little things here and there. We're always trying to get better.
In closing, one thing that stands out to you, I want to improve on blank. What is it?
I want to win more games next year.
That's a hell of a plan right there.
Yeah.
That's a good answer to the question. Hey, seriously, thanks for coming in here today and being with us. Hopefully we can do a lot more, especially when we can get away from football. I like talking about hoop and other aspects, too, getting you away from football. But thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank
you.
you.
Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Colts, in studio with us. Quick break. We're going to come back. It's 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Hang tight.
Hey, guys, it's Andy Sweeney for Universal.
The Ride with JMV.
Here's Johnny. David Letterman.
Hi, David. I'm Grandpa.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Oh, I just messed that up here. I always do that. What the heck is wrong with me here? Man, I'm telling you. Go ahead and hit me something over there. I don't know what I just did to this machine. The machine just messed up. First of all, how old am I when I call this a machine? I don't know what I just hit. Here, turn that back down. Let me completely foobar this. You ready? This is what was going to happen. Turn me up. The post was hitting everything, and I just fat-fingered this thing. That doesn't sound good either. Just better shut up. Shane Steichen, podcast 1075thefan.com. The franchise tag going out to Michael Pittman Jr. We talked about that, the value that they see in him, and he had an explanation because so many of you have asked the question about yards after the catch. In terms of how much he's getting, there's no problem with the volume of catches, that number, but the yards after the catch is what I wanted to ask him. He talked about that and a lot more, too. Podcast 1075thefan.com. It's interesting, too. You go back to last week, and he was going to join me on Radio Row. And this is one of the things I try to do, and this does not at all make me any better than anybody else. I mean, how can I do that? Because I'm pretty crummy the way that it is. But the one thing in my approach that I do, and I know this to be true, I did it last year with Chris Ballard. 15 minutes before he came on with me on Radio Row during the Combine, he's meeting with, everybody in the local media. And part of what I want to do is provide a different Q&A than what a lot of you either had just heard or had just read via social media 10 minutes before. And I got to thank him for this as well because he helped me. I called Rick Venturi yesterday, and I said, man, remember last year when I called you before Chris Ballard came on? Last year it was literally like 30 minutes before he came on. I called Rick, and I said, you tell me, as somebody that's been in football as long as you have, you tell me what you want to know. Not so much what I want to know, but what you want to know. And I did that again yesterday with Rick in preparation. And I thought some of Rick's angles, certainly with what you're looking for in the defense, because, Rick questioned Gus Bradley still being there. I mean, obviously you change a couple of chairs out and bring in new people on that defensive staff. What are you looking for in that defense to get out of where you have been in the past couple of years? But I wanted to thank Rick for doing that. He didn't have to do that. I think Rick's still like hanging out vacation mode right now, but he is an incredible resource to utilize in that capacity. And a lot of that was from the conversation that Rick and I had yesterday. And again, if you missed any of Shane Steichen, the one thing I also noticed, I don't know if you guys did as well regarding Shane, is the first time I had him on was a year ago when he got the job. And I mentioned that I listened to Matt Taylor interview him right before he came on with me and then found out that I had to be ready with a battery of questions. And that was a little bit different because that was introductory. But having Rick as a resource really helps out. And I want everybody to get as much information as possible. And remember, we're talking to people that don't want to give you information. I mean, they try hard not to give you that information. But if you hear a bunch of questions 10 minutes before, I talk to Shane or early in the day, when he's meeting with everybody in Zoom and all you have to do is go back to social media and see the answers to those questions. I always find Rick as an incredibly valuable resource to come at it from a football angle. And a lot of that Q&A I had midway through was courtesy of our friend Rick Venturi. And he is such a value, and I can't thank him enough for that. And being a part of the show, certainly, but being able to call him up and ask him that yesterday was, again, of tremendous value. So thank you, Rick, and Shane Steichen podcast, 1075thefan.com, if you missed any of it. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, we're talking back-to-back GLVC regular season titles. He is a friend of the show. He is one of the all-timers at Roncalli. And, man, is he having another great season along with my friend Mike Burris and the gang down on Indy's South Side. The head coach of Indy is Paul Casaro. Hello, Paul. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Man, I'm so happy for you. I am. I know how much work you and your guys put in, your staff and your players, and I know this is a part of, a step-by-step goal process. How special was that feeling once again going second straight in the GLVC?
Well, thanks for saying that. It was incredible because when you really think about how historic the GLVC's been, a back-to-back outright champion hasn't happened since Kentucky Wesleyan three-peated from 97 to 2000 when Ray Harper was coaching. So it's been over 20 years since that's happened, and we've gone 34-6 in league play the last two seasons combined. And I just have a great group of guys, great staff, and we do work hard, so to see the culmination of all that hard work to come together, it's really, really cool.
Hey, Paul Casaro is with us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Is this what I know you have goals like this, but is this what you eyeballed on paper expected with this group this season?
It is. We last year, if you look at, you never want to reflect back, but let's call it what it is. Last year we went 26-5. We won the league in the regular season. We're the number one seed in the NCAA tournament. We didn't peak at the right time. We were the best team in the country in February. We fizzled out. Got upset in the first round, and we returned 7 guys. So then we go and we recruit pretty well, bring in a few nice pieces to complement the 7 we returned, including 2 All-Americans. And my whole goal this year for our group was let's peak at the right time. We want to be peaking in March. Let's have a similar type season, but let's peak at the right time. So we beefed up our non-conference schedule. We got off to a slow start. We were 2-4 out the gate, but we had a ridiculously hard schedule. But we come together. We go 19-3 over the next 22 games. We win our league, go 17-3 in league play. We're back in the top 25 and projected number one seed for the NCAA tournament again. And I think we're playing our best ball at the right time right now. So I'm really excited.
Compare it to last year. You mentioned, kind of, I don't know if you got tired, kind of a little bit of a fade late. Any way you handled it differently this year compared to the experience of a year ago?
It's been a little bit of our guys have been there, so they know what to expect. I've been there as a coach, so I've manipulated practice to keep them fresh a little bit better. And we've installed things periodically as the season went on this year, we're going to keep adding as the season goes on rather than try to throw it all at them at one time at the beginning. And I think that's helped. So, it's been just a constant evolution of our staff working together. This is the first year, it's going to year 4 for me. I get 2 full-time assistants and a grad assistant. So I have a staff of 4, a support staff of 3. It's the first time I've gone from one year to the next and returned the entire staff. So that's been a big thing, too, the continuity. It's just been, like I said, you've been around sports long enough, and everyone listening to the show is, too. Sports is so much, the talent in the room, the work ethic, all that. But the stars have to align. It's got to make sense. There's got to be some luck along the way. And I do feel like things are trending in our favor right now.
Well, and Paul Casaro, the head coach of Indy, joins us, the GLVC basketball championship. I want to get to that with you in a second. Now, you got a dude like Burris, when you bring a little Greene County into the program, that's always going to be that work ethic right there. But you bring up a good point. How you, in a long season, and man, this, these seasons get longer by the year. There's always an addition. There's always another day, it seems, maybe another week, because everybody loves it as much as they do. How did you modify your schedule, especially your practice schedule, to maintain that freshness you were looking for that you maybe didn't have a year ago?
Well, and John, to let you know, ours was even longer than most teams because we did our foreign tour in August. We went to Canada in August and got 10 practices leading up to that in 3 games. So our guys got a typical month they typically don't get. So my whole goal was come March, I want our guys excited to be coming to practice because that's what you play college basketball for. I never want my kids to be resenting coming to practice when it should be the most exciting time of the year for them. So what we started to do was I'd make a practice plan. This started back in November. And every time I made up a practice the entire year, I go to my staff, I go, okay, where can we shave 20 minutes? Every single day. Make up practice. We're going to shave 20 minutes off of every single practice. And there's got to be, whether we make a drill shorter, whether we just grab a drill for the day. And I think that's been really beneficial. And if you think about 20 minutes every day over the course of the season, that really adds up.
Yeah, and then in terms of you, I mean, you mentioned your staff, and you got a hard-working staff without question. But let's just face it, so much, all of this is on your shoulders. And you know, if you and your guys don't get it done, it doesn't get done. That's just the way that it is.
Oh yeah, I mean it is, and you know that's the nature of it. That's what we signed up for. So I mean we don't shy away from that. So we got to get creative and come up with ways to make it happen, and that's what we're trying to do.
All right, the championship tournament. Give me the thoughts on that. I'm looking squarely at the bracket right now. After that great regular season, you're trying to follow this thing up. Obviously, in the championship tournament, what piques your interest about it? Just instead of in general terms being the one seed in this bad boy.
Well, I mean, our league is just so tough. I respect the coaches. I respect all the players. You know, there's no night. There's no easy night. You can't get a draw in the seed 1 through 8 in the GLVC tournament and be excited. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, great, I get to go play this team. No, every team is so tough. But here's what I do like about us. We're playing our best ball. We played a game on Saturday, played really well. We played 9 guys. And every single one of them contributed and played well. And that's very rare when you play 9 guys and everyone played a good game. Usually you can say, okay, 7 or 8 played well, and maybe these 1 or 2 didn't. All of my guys are playing well at the right time, so that's really good. But, you know, the main thing is this. I like making history for this school, for our program. We've won back-to-back regular season league titles. Our school's never won a GLVC conference tournament. In fact, my second season, we went to the conference tournament championship game, and that was the first time UIndy's ever made the championship game on conference tournament weekend. So our staff and a few of our players, we've been in that Sunday game before, and that's a first for the school, but it's time that we get back there and actually cut down the nets.
He's Paul Casaro of UIndy, the regular season champions back-to-back in the GLVC. He joins us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I don't think I've asked you this before. I mean, obviously, you've grown up around that area, you know, attended, you know, Ron Colley, went off to coach, obviously, and then came back to coach at UIndy. You know the history of UIndy. You know, I'm sure the history going back to Indiana Central, the basketball history there. When you're making history of your own, how special is it considering that you're basically from this area? That was a great question right there. I think we just lost Paul. Paul Casaro. Are you there? I'm sorry. You cut out for about 8 seconds. Go ahead and reboot that answer if you heard the entire question. Go ahead, Paul. He's not there. See if you can find him again. I'll reboot that question myself because he is just, I mean, really, what, a 5-mile radius? And you know the history of UIndy. You know the history of Indiana Central, the basketball history down there. And the accomplishments that you have, how much more special might that make it? So Paul Casaro going back-to-back in the GLVC regular season. He rejoins us right now. Did you hear the entire question before you cut out there?
I did. I apologize. I'm still in the gym. We just got done with practice, so
that's okay.
As soon as I get it does. Because,
hey, hold on. Hey, Paul, hold on. We're having phone difficulties right there. Can you stand on your right foot? I know you've done this in calisthenics at Ron Colley before. Right foot, maybe leaning. No, I'm just joking. See if you can get in a better spot. Because this really interests me considering you're from the area. Doesn't sound like he's there. If it's a problem, that's okay. We can get him next time. All right. Third time's the charm with Paul Casaro, the head coach of UIndy. If he's ready. Paul, are you there now? Sorry about that.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm sorry. I had to walk outside. I was in the gym. And
No, it's all good.
I just walked outside.
That's what happens, man. You're putting the work in. People understand that. We're taking you away from your thing. I don't know if you heard the entirety of the question. Does it make it any more special because you're from the area and you know the history of the basketball program going all the way back?
Absolutely. Angus Nickerson, Royce Waltman, Stan Gerard, David Logan, Billy Keller. I mean, there's just the names. It does. I'm a South Side guy. I have respect for every coach and player that's come before us. And I wore the jersey. I wasn't a very good player, but I did wear the jersey, so it does make it very special.
Dude, you were a good player. Come on, man. Come on now. All right. Hey, when are we gonna hear about you? You guys get underway on Thursday, correct?
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep, we can play McKendree. Just played them on Saturday, but a very good opponent. And we're going to have to be able to defend. They score at a high rate, have a 22-point a game scorer, and our guys I think are ready to go.
Yeah, St. Charles, Missouri, the side two, and Thursday versus McKendree. How long of a bus ride is that for you and the guys?
About 3 hours and 45 on the dot. It's not that bad at all. We play at Lindenwood. We'll stop at SIU Ebersville along the way tomorrow and practice, so that'll be a good day for us. And get a good night's rest and be ready to go on Thursday.
Well done right there. Hey, I'm really happy for you. And we'll reach out again after the tournament and then talk even more. But congratulations on going back-to-back. And we're always here when you need us. You know that. Tell Burris I said hello as well. I'm assuming he's okay?
Oh, he's doing great. Being Greene County's finest always represents.
You going to have enough kids to populate Perry Meridian here one of these days?
I think so, man. He's got his oldest son, Baden. He's a hooper. I think Falcons are going to like watching him play.
You should have seen him growing up. He and his brothers, they were relentless. Let me tell you. You have to ask him sometime. Ask him about the middle of the summer when it's 100 degrees, full court, 2-on-2 games with he and his brother and me and Mark Barnheiser. Got to ask him about that.
I've heard all about it, and that's why you see Brooks doing so well at Northwestern. He's cut from the same cloth as his dad.
I'm telling you, people thought we were nuts. People would say, hey, you want to come over and play 5-on-5 here? What are you doing playing 2-on-2? And I said, we're here because Mark Barnheiser's making us play 2-on-2, full court. That's why, right there. But, yeah, it was incredible. And Mike wasn't too far behind where Mark was either as far as – being headstrong like that. But, hey, congratulations on things so far, Paul. We'll do it again soon.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it.
Paul Casaro right there of Indy. Full court 2-on-2 at the Hyper, and literally it was 100 degrees. It was 100 degrees, and it was, we'd be on a Sunday morning, I don't know, 7 a.m. I'd be hungover. I probably didn't even sleep. Hey, he's right about Brooks. If you've seen Brooks's numbers, we got to get Brooks back on here, too, at some point. Brooks Barnheiser of Northwestern. 14 points a game, second leading scorer for Northwestern. And I don't think I realized it until today. Brooks is averaging over 7 rebounds a game. He is their leading rebounder and leading steal guy on the season. And when I say steal guy, I'm talking about steals, but he is like a man of steel. He is relentless out there. He is the type of player that anybody would love to have on their team. So, yeah, Paul's right about that. Congratulations to Paul and you, Indy, on those accomplishments, and keep them coming as well. All right, quick break, and we come back. We had a busy show today. Michael Pittman Jr. gets the non-exclusive franchise tag. I explained that a little bit earlier. Get a breakdown from Brad Spielberger of Pro Football Focus, and talked about his value with his head coach, Shane Steichen, a little bit earlier in the hour in the podcast with Brad, with Shane, with Greg Rakestraw, and Bobby Riddell as well, getting set to do a little Boilermaker Fighting Illini basketball tonight from Champaign on the Boilermaker Radio Network. And Paul Casaro, the podcast at 1075thefan.com, will return. Tickets up for grabs to see Primus and Coheed and Cambria coming to the Everwise Music Center. We'll tell you how how you can win. Your chance to win is coming up in a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. 93.5, 1075 The Fan.
The UAFA Champions Round 16 Leg 2 rematches are set.
The Ride with JMV.
We're not going to fall for a banana in the tailpipe.
You're not gonna fall for the banana in the tailpipe?
It should be more natural, brother. It should flow out like this. Look, man, I ain't falling for no banana in my tailpipe.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
We got Primus and Coheed and Cambria coming to the Everwise Amphitheater at White River State Park. Look out for it. That is on August the 1st. On a Thursday night at 7 o'clock, number 9 at 239-1070. You're going to go on me because I like you, because we give away tickets right here and have you celebrate during shows. Let me tell you this. If you have never been to the Everwise Amphitheater at White River State Park, it is a can't miss. What a fantastic venue. So shout out to Live Nation, all our friends over there from obviously Jimmy, that you know very well, Hendricks, Kyle, that you know very well. Always putting in the work to make sure we have all these concert tickets to give away. Primus and Coheed and Cambria. Primus is worth the price of admission anyway, right? Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So have at it. Number 9 at 239-1070. Yeah, I did. I thought Shane Steichen was good earlier. You get the podcast 1075thefan.com. It's really been a busy show. A lot going on later on tonight. We'll get the recap, but we talked Pacers a little bit earlier. The Pacers losers of 2 straight, and really losers of 2 straight in the worst of ways. And there's not a lot going right for this group right now. While there's still time to groove this thing up a little bit, it would be okay if they would start that climb, for example, tonight. Because they need, if there is a team that needs that so-called slump buster, even though it's only been 2 games, but you look down the stretch, compared to the teams next to them, relatable to them in the Eastern Conference, you know, in terms of the playoff picture, there's easier schedules than what they have, again, stretch run-wise. And let's just face it, this team doesn't look like it's ready for anything right now. You know, San Antonio on Sunday, you go back to Friday, for example. You get New Orleans on the road. You knew that was going to be tough, but they made it tough on themselves because they were so bad. But New Orleans scored basically in the first half at will, and that game was really never close. I think the Pacers in the second half cut it to 11 on a bit of a run, and that was significant because, I mean, hell, it was down from 31, so they trimmed 20 points off of it. Then lost with the Pelicans going away. And you thought maybe they could find a little something in San Antonio, which certainly was not the case whatsoever, which leads to more questions. And the biggest question on the top of that list right now is that of the health of Tyrese Halliburton, of the energy level that he has right now, and why he has not looked the part. There are lots of opinions out there. You know, which one could be accurate? I think you could take any of them. I do. I think you can take tired as being significant with the All-Star weekend and being the ambassador here locally and nonstop. You know, from the game being played to being out. And listen, I'm not suggesting these should be excuses. These are things that when you're the star of the team and when you become viewed at the elite level, these are things that you're going to have to work through. It's just like when Rick Carlisle talks about the different defenses that are thrown at him. You know, the word is out on Tyrese Halliburton and how you're trying to handle him now. You know, the larger, longer type of players. Whatever. These are all things that if you're viewed as an elite level player in the NBA that you have to handle. And the past couple of games, he is not. And this team looks a hell of a lot different. Whether you want to blame him for being exhausted, maybe being a little bit injured, you know, obviously not having that consistency. You want to blame the whole transfer of Pascal Siakam, which I think they're a game under 500 since he's been here. And again, as I mentioned yesterday, never overlook what Buddy Hield brought to the table. And I realize, I know this to be true, that they felt there was no alternative but to trade him. But again, as I brought up to Chad Buchanan a couple of weeks ago, you know what you're losing when you trade him. And every time somebody tried to explain to me, well, he's slumping, he doesn't shoot the ball that well anymore, I have to subtly remind them of the significance he brings to the table when he's on the floor. And a lot of those aspects this team simply has not had since. What are some of the situations that look worse now offensively with them? The ball movement, the spacing, and in large part, he brings that even with a slumping jump shot. He brings that to the table night in and night out. You have to know where he is. That creates space. And rotationally speaking, that creates FUBAR defensively. There are a lot of reasons why this team, again, has been slumping recently, and that is among them. As much as you want to say it, I don't think anybody out there expected Doug McDermott to step up. I don't think anybody expects Ben Shepherd to be, in the vicinity consistently what Buddy Hield is. So you knew you were going to have some drop. You just hoped it wasn't significant. And the pace of play, the offensive output, it has been significant recently. They got to find that groove again, because we know this, even with the not so subtle raising of the bar defensively, it's not going to be dramatic enough to make up for losing things on the offensive end. And that's frankly what they've done. We'll see if they can change that up later on tonight. Last time out, we thought all was good in that Dallas win. Dallas at home a week ago Sunday, I thought it was their most complete game of the season. They obviously against New Orleans got that done at home, but since that point in time, it has been a struggle. It has been a slog, and Tyrese Halliburton has led that. You got to see him climb out of that, and it would be great tonight at 8:30 if he was capable, along with his teammates, to do that. Again, tough call. Prior to that win over Dallas a week ago Sunday, Dallas had won 7 straight. I think since then, they maybe have lost 4 of 5. So those streaks can come along. It's just when they hit you. It'd be nice to see the Pacers get back on the other side of a streak later on tonight. 8:30, the tip time, 8 o'clock, your coverage begins right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. The news of the day is that of Michael Pittman Jr. getting the non-exclusive franchise tag. That obviously the big deal that we were looking for, and that's what we'll continue to talk about, and that should come as no surprise to anybody. Now, the Colts and his representation is still trying to work through things, but that's what transpired a little bit earlier today. So, $21.8 million he'd be due this particular season, and obviously non-exclusive franchise tag. Other teams can throw offers, but the Colts can match, and the Colts can get compensation big time with first-round selections, and the Colts have until July the 15th to long-term Michael Pittman Jr., which is the expectation. Shane Steichen a little bit earlier as well. Podcast 1075thefan.com. Greg Rakestraw, Bobby Riddell, complete recap of the Boilers fighting Illini tonight as well. Brad Spielberger of PFF, and Paul Cassaro. James, great job on the road at Whiskey Business Southside with Bud Light tomorrow at 3. See you there.
Next year's rookie.